101. Is X not only afraid of the dark, but also a straight man? Daichi, where are you? Daichi, answer me. Everyone had been cheering over Daichi's hard-won first victory, despite his acrophobia, but a single frantic voice cut through the celebration. On the screen, Asuna, fresh from being rescued by X, was still combing through the ruins, sobbing as she searched every shadow for the missing Daichi. She could barely breathe, tears kept welling up. Daichi was dead, she thought in despair. My Daichi! Hey! A familiar shout snapped her attention to a young man running toward her, smiling and waving. Joy flooded her, instantly chased by shame and anger when she looked at his grin. Asuna glared at him, voice breaking. You bastard! I thought you were dead. But Daichi, a seasoned model kid enthusiast at heart, had the delighted look of someone who'd just gotten a new Bandai original toy. He was already excitedly showing the Digma Spark doll to his teammates, paying no mind to Asuna's stormy expression. That tone, that look, Asuna cared so much about Daichi. There had to be something between them. And yet, looking at Daichi, she couldn't shake the feeling he was so straightforward, the archetypal straight man, just like Hokuto. The crowd watching the broadcast grew curious. Why give Asuna such a specific camera shot? Now that I think about it, that encounter was something else, Daichi said as the screen dimmed. Yes, but what surprised me more was your defense team on this world, X continued. Before I appeared, they'd already been fighting monsters for 15 years. X fancied himself well-traveled through many worlds, but he'd never seen a defense team like Zio. Their combat capability was astonishing, fierce, relentless. Especially that gluttonous Dr. German who claimed he couldn't handle eating 13 meals a day, and yet his black tech inventions were absurdly powerful. He'd even built a knockoff of the ultimate armor for himself. Even among the defense teams X's Ultra Seniors had worked with, few measured up to Tech Zio. In some ways, even Senior Hikari might feel outclassed. Humans' tech trees could be so strange, barely capable of free space travel or leaving their system, yet able to whip out gadgets that stunned aliens. Dr. German had analyzed X's abilities and built an ultra pistol that could instantly kill a Zorabian, mass-producing a device that had failed elsewhere. If he got his hands on Brother Man's pecs, maybe the next day we'd have a shield of the cosmic hero. Forget Zero's ultimate armor. Noah himself might have to sign a receipt and leave. X shook his head in bemused admiration. While some teams were still using scrubbing rays and crashing planes, Zio had been plotting bigger answers for 15 years without an Ultraman. Truly impressive. And yet X kept thinking about Daichi's odd human side. Whether it came from Hikari, Max, or who knew what, Daichi felt like an anomaly among scientists. Instead of a convenient, powerful, or reckless host, X had ended up with a man who was scared of heights. Just as X was mulling this over, a line of bold text crawled across the center of the screen. It's too dark, I can't see anything. Eh? No one knew who had said it, but X shivered, and Daichi couldn't hide his smug little smile. Too dark? What does that mean? It sounds like a frightened tone. Could it be Daichi again? So this kid's not only afraid of heights, he's afraid of the dark? No, that voice doesn't sound like Daichi. It sounds more like X, the audience gasped. X, who'd made such a solid first impression, might be afraid of the dark? Really? The video continued. And if Daichi and Asuna walked side by side down a street in ordinary clothes, not in their Zio uniforms. Daichi wore a sharp gray suit and a gentle smile. Asuna had on a white dress with narrow black stripes and beige heels, looking delicate and charming. They were an attractive pair, at least from the camera's angle. The viewers immediately wondered if it was a date. Perhaps they'd be going through a haunted house later, and that would explain the too dark line. But Asuna's next words broke any romantic illusion. Sigh, we don't look like a couple at all like this. Exactly. Daichi didn't even take her hand. They weren't even matching their steps. She thought he was being oblivious, but Daichi didn't seem to notice her hint. By the way, what's our mission? The plan is this. I'll distract her. As soon as she's alert, we'll make the first move and switch the gun to anesthetic mode. So it was a setup. Some viewers sighed in disappointment and relief. The scene shifted. In a dimly lit room that gave off an eerie air, Daichi and Asuna sat awkwardly side by side on the edge of a bed, wearing bathrobes and waiting. If this weren't a mission, A passerby might have assumed something more intimate was planned. A cold-tempered woman in sunglasses entered the room. Asuna tried to make small talk. "This pot of flowers is really pretty, but they need sunlight, don't they? Keeping them in a room like this." The woman toyed with something in her hand and said in a strange, hollow voice, "Plants need darkness and yin energy just as much as they need sunlight. Modern human society has blurred day and night, and it disrupts living things." Both Daichi and Asuna, and everyone watching, went on alert. This woman was not right. The world cannot be drowned in false light. Humans are too arrogant. "Who exactly are you?" Asuna asked sharply. "The real Miss Ryoko died 2 years ago." The woman said nothing. She drew a pistol and fired. Asuna dodged, pushing Daichi aside. "Stop!" Daichi lunged and grabbed her, but the woman casually struck his head. Dark, ink-like ripples of energy spread out. Daichi collapsed instantly. The audience groaned. "He just gave up like that? Why was your human host so different from Ultraman orbs? Who would have kept fighting?" In the broadcast tags, Daichi had been introduced as a scientist. Viewers had assumed he'd be like Hikari, competent and unflappable. They hadn't expected him to be a plain civilian. "Asuna, you okay?" someone asked. Asuna, seeing that Daichi was only dazed and not seriously hurt, chased after the woman as the scene cut to the street. The woman laughed like a mad sorceress. "Stop right there!" Asuna sprinted after her, tap, 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 heels clicking faster and faster. The villain heard her and spun, firing at close range. Asuna barely dodged the black energy bullet, but her ankle twisted and one heel snapped clean off. "Daichi, are you all right?" He showed up late, breathless. "If I were fine, why would I be lying on the ground?" she snapped, annoyed at his late arrival and his straight man calm. She glared down at the broken heel, on the verge of tears, and when she looked back up, the woman had vanished. Viewers were curious about who that woman was, but more than that, they wanted to know, was X really afraid of the dark? The next scene was quieter. They sat in a small pavilion while Asuna glued the heel back together. Daichi, for no apparent reason, suddenly blurted out, "You can't fix it with glue." He spoke with the air of someone analyzing a problem. "The shoe has to bear tens of kilograms of load at once." Asuna scowled and snapped, "If you can't say anything helpful, just shut up, idiot." That exchange cracked people up. What was Daichi thinking, blurting tens of kilograms to Asuna in the middle of her misery? This kid was such a straight man, so literal, so blunt. Daichi wondered if he'd said something wrong. He was only trying to relieve the awkwardness. Then X, the one viewers had been praising earlier, spoke up, freezing the smiles on many faces. "Her weight is 47.5 kilograms, and her body fat percentage is 25.2%. Daichi, you should give the precise value. Tens of kilograms is too vague." People burst out laughing again. X had just gone and been precise in the most embarrassing way possible, so his emotional intelligence had limits. With Daichi, he was blunt and clinical. With everyone else, he was mercilessly exact. Forget acrophobia and fear of the dark. X's straight man tendencies were apparently on par with his human host. Daichi said tens of kilograms and got called an idiot. X gave an exact biometric readout. The match was perfect. The crowd ached for Asuna for a half second and then dissolved into laughter. P.S. Writing X reminded me of Old Max's guest appearance, which made me think of a joke I once saw. "Father of Ultra, Old Max, go make a guest appearance on X's set. Give Sevens treatment. Subaraya Productions' favorite son, getting Old Man Sevens treatment? I must go." On set, "Father of Ultra, you lied to me." It turns out Sevens treatment means getting beaten up 1v3 on Black Tide Island. Oh, and this book has passed 100 chapters. Hooray! 102. Death is Endless Darkness. I finally get it. These Ultra Warriors are all straight men. No women in their hearts, all divine in battle. You can't say that. Even if Ace is straight, he was incredible when he saved Minami Yuko. I wonder which other straight men haven't been exposed yet. Hurry up and bring them all out. As the audience bantered, the broadcast flickered. Daichi, watching the feed, suddenly became a little self-conscious. He covered his X divisor, X terminal, with a hand and murmured to X, "Talking about a woman's weight will get you into trouble." "Eh? Why?" "For health, you need accurate numbers." X replied, completely failing to grasp young Earth women's strange fixation on the subject. He was genuinely earnest about the importance of health data. "Get into trouble? He couldn't see the problem. Nearby, Asuna, who had just re-glued her high heel, overheard the commotion and leaned in, curious. Daichi, what are you muttering about? Daichi waved his hands and tried to explain, but before they could continue, rumble. The ground shook violently as if an earthquake had struck. People in the distance stumbled. Daichi and Asuna exchanged looks and sprinted toward the epicenter. Night had already fallen at the scene. The mysterious woman from earlier stood at the center of the disturbance. Before Daichi could call out, she let out a piercing shriek. Streetlights and electronic billboards around her began to flicker and crackle with electricity. Asuna grit her teeth against the static and raised her gun. This time I won't let you escape. Look, the woman said, her voice almost lyrical. This world is full of blinding, dazzling fake lights. Humans want to steal the night from us. The darkness is the most beautiful thing. Behind her, the ground erupted. A colossal figure burst forth with a roar that shook the city to its foundations. Go, Tyrant, the woman commanded, pointing. Tyrant obeyed, rampaging through the streets. Rolling flames spewed from its mouth, lighting the sky and reducing building after building to rubble. Some viewers watching online were bemused. Weren't Tyrant's flames supposed to brighten the night? The blast's aftershocks sent Daichi and Asuna tumbling. Daichi reached instinctively for the X divisor at his waist, only to find his hand empty. He didn't notice its absence at first. Asuna! Asuna! Snap out of it! He shouted, dragging the stunned girl to safety. Then, to the stunned disbelief of countless viewers, a tiny, anxious voice began crying from the ground, insistent, almost childlike. Daichi! Daichi! Come save me! I can't see anything! Daichi's X divisor began to vibrate wildly, buzzing with a frantic, repeating call. It's too dark! It's too dark! Daichi, hurry! If you don't come, I'll be lost. Daichi bent and picked the device up. X's avatar on the screen was trembling. The device just got flipped over. X sputtered, clearly alarmed. Please take care of it. It's a precision instrument. The revelation instantly stunned the chat. No one had expected it of the Giant of Light. When X had first appeared, he'd stood beside Daichi like a wise mentor, guiding him through battles, a perfect male god. Now the Ultraman race's data and light savior was admitting he was scared of the dark. Not the apocalyptic darkness of Alien Emperor blotting out the sun, but a simple fear of not being able to see his surroundings. The viewers howled with laughter. Low emotional intelligence answer. Daichi, I'm afraid of the dark. High emotional intelligence answer. It's a precision instrument. These two were made for each other. One human host afraid of heights, one Ultraman afraid of the dark, both straight men. Unbelievable. X probably won't go evil. He's scared of the dark. Ha! Even other Ultraman watching didn't know what to say. Here was X, a being of data and light, admitting a fear as human as any, an irony that drew a flurry of joking and disbelief. In another broadcast hub, Honkai Impact Third World, Kiana stared at the monitor in surprise. Is this true? Ultraman X is afraid of the dark? If so, didn't X fight Grigio for ages in space? He must have been scared then. Kiana's voice trailed off. Mebius was quiet for a moment, then replied gravely. No matter the darkness, when facing an enemy like that, fear is useless. I think X had only one thing then, the belief that he had to defeat it. That belief is enough to overcome fear. Still, heroes aren't flawless. Ultra Warriors have weaknesses. I've heard X once lost his physical body. Perhaps because of that loss, sudden darkness brings back the fear of losing all senses at once, of falling into boundless darkness. Kiana considered the idea. You've felt that too, haven't you? Mebius chuckled, attempting to soothe her. Let the past be past. I only hope you and your friends never have to experience such darkness again. Elsewhere, on a quiet world, X had switched back into X divisor form and sat in Daichi's hands. Seeing the little device, Daichi laughed so hard he slapped his knee, the same man now being teased in return. Don't laugh, Daichi. I'm not afraid of the dark. It's just that when the X divisor is flipped over, I can't see anything and I get flustered, X protested guiltily. Is that so? Daichi teased, flicking his wrist as if to flip the device face down. Daichi, what are you doing? Stop it, X shrieked. Daichi only pretended to scare him. He set the X divisor carefully on the ground and looked at X's blinking avatar with a softer smile. I know, X. You're not afraid of darkness for its own sake. You're afraid of losing your body, the feeling of not being able to perceive, not being able to control the battle, not being able to protect people. That's what you fear. He thought of all the dangers they had faced together, the countless dark corridors, the enemies who hid in shadow. Their cooperation had grown until neither would let the other fall. One of the Ultra spirits is to never give up and to face yourself, Daichi said. X sighed and smiled. From the moment I chose you, I knew you were that kind of person. Speaking of which, I miss Asuna. When do we go back to see her and everyone? Daichi transformed into X and shot off toward the starry sky. On a distant planet, a group of aliens huddled around a screen, poring over the feed and debating the newly revealed weaknesses of X and Daichi. Heh, X and Daichi Ozora, such obvious weaknesses. What an opportunity, Zorabian hissed. Instead of scheming, think about dinner, Alien Knuckle grunted. A slan alien leaning against a dozing Cheeble snorted. Do you honestly believe those two are doomed by being afraid of heights and darkness? Your ancestors who turned to ash are warning enough. These weaknesses are like Earth's gotcha games. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. Taking it too seriously is the real clownery. Practical, if cowardly, he had decided to make money instead. Why risk dying in some foolish plot when he could record the Ultra deeds and sell the stories to fans across the Interstellar Alliance? He thumbed his ebook. It held records of every Ultra who had appeared on screen, from Leo to X. Only one title was missing. After a moment's thought, he typed a name for his book, Land of Light Inventory, starting with the Jeep warning. At that instant, a crushing will swept across the cosmos. The slan alien's whole body trembled. For an instant, he saw his long-dead grandmother waving at him from beyond the ashes. The pressure was enough to pulverize him. He looked around. His companions were oblivious. Shaken, he quickly erased the title and the pressure vanished. He tried again, hesitating over new names. Help me think of a new title. Need to try multiple options. The segment ended and the program continued with narration. New text scrolled across the screen. Even Ultra Warriors and their human hosts have fears. Daichi fears heights, X fears darkness. But these fears are not insurmountable. Yet somewhere in the universe lives a people with a different fear. They suffer from mysophobia, an intense dread of filth. The cleaner their bodies, the more abundant their energy. On Earth, when perfectly clean, they can reach an infinite state, akin to a little Mebius. But if contaminated, their energy drains. Their color timer flashes red and combat power collapses. Our next protagonist comes from that place. Now playing special transformation video 4, the Prince of the Z95 Nebula, the Ultra Warrior who wields a sparkling toothbrush and loves cleanliness above all. Z-S! Who? Zas, who had only just arrived on the Land of Light, stared up at the screen with a big question mark over his head. Why was this about him? P.S. I was tricked by a teammate. During my lunch break, I saw a comment claiming the Daichi thing was a rumor, so I checked it. It turns out the child in the ending wasn't played by Daichi's actor, just a strange internet rumor. I was so gullible. If it had been him, they would have promoted it like Riku. I'm sorry, I spread wrong info. Tomorrow at lunch, I'll eat a big chicken leg to atone for my sins. This must be Snow. This must be Snow. Oh, Zas, you're actually in a video. Inside the Ultra Arena, Nice, who had been training, smiled in surprise at his friend. It really is you. But why put you in a video? Not many people even know you, right? Zess scratched his head, surprised and a little pleased. It felt like a quiet student suddenly praised by the teacher and called up to receive an award in front of the whole class. Though he held the title of Prince, compared to the great heroes of the Space Garrison, he'd never been a leading figure. He rarely even got to be a background character. Could someone like him really be worth this kind of attention? Zas was happy, but nervous too. Nice patted his shoulder with a comforting grin. You're at least the prince of the Z95 Nebula. How could no one know you? Zas, who's that? Whose subordinate is he? I don't think I've heard of him. At that, many Ultra Warriors around the Land of Light murmured in curiosity. Even some members of the Space Garrison drew blanks when they searched their memories. Ah, Zas. He's like Leo, a prince of a planet, Brother Man explained, and Zafi nodded. Judging by the timing, he should have reached the security force by now. As the threat to the kingdom grew, several elders wrapped in red cloaks had moved to form the Ultra Alliance, calling on Ultra warriors from other worlds to join the defense. Naturally, that invitation included O50, U40, and the Z95 Nebula, Zass's home. A prince? Then he must be powerful, Zeta said, thinking of his master Leo and of Taro, their chief instructor, also something of a prince, both of whom hit hard. He assumed Zass would be formidable as well. He's strong, Brother Man admitted with a touch of hesitation, but like X and Daichi, he has a fear, something he struggles with. By now he should have overcome it, Seven added smoothly. He's a good model for the younger warriors. Seven's words carried a weight of quiet confidence, as if he'd watched the whole thing happen. Across the cosmos, other worlds buzzed with discussion about Zass. Beyond his rank, the introduction had hinted at a wildly unusual premise. His cleanliness affected his combat power and energy. Even odder, his transformation method used a toothbrush. That alone sparked curiosity. The video began to play. Thump, thump, thump. A black helicopter like a car with propellers entered the frame. A middle-aged man with a neat center part poked his head from the window, aiming a camera. It was a Banzan alien, known for plundering Earth's gold and trying to remove toxins from his body, carrying out all kinds of destruction. The helicopter flew into a narrow valley. Whoosh! A giant red figure suddenly shot out. Mostly red with white patterns and a somewhat clumsy bearing, the figure's large, round eyes made him look almost comical. What? The smug Banzan alien was taken aback. An ultra warrior? He stared at the reddish giant, and a rumor flickered through his mind. The legends of the red passing demon, the monster hunter, the red devil Superman, a terrifying warrior who'd slain countless monsters and was thought unbeatable. The Banzan alien didn't want to mess with that reputation and immediately turned to flee, planning to investigate from a safe distance so as not to jeopardize his gold-swallowing plans. The video's protagonist, Zass, tilted his head in confusion, thinking someone had mistaken him for another hero. Seeing the alien leave, he didn't dwell on it. More pressing were his own problems. He couldn't shoot straight. His light rays were all crooked, which was why he'd slipped away from the defense team to practice in this uninhabited valley. He picked up a stone and tossed it into the air. Crossing his hands, he fired a bright red beam, Spatula Ray. Damn it! What no one expected was how erratic the beam was. Others' finishing rays ran straight and true. Zass's shot seemed to have a mind of its own, twisting, spiraling, the shape of a decorative lamp outside a hair salon. It darted unpredictably in odd curves, even hitting him. Zeta watched with sympathy. The spectacle reminded him of when Haruki had once misfired his hypergun. After seeing this, he wanted to meet Zass. Zass sighed under the jaunty background music, hands on his hips, dejected. But he didn't give up. Sighing wouldn't make him stronger. He bent, picked up another stone, and threw it higher. This time, he had to get it right. Damn it! The special array shot straight for a meter, then suddenly veered sharply and ricocheted against the left mountain wall. It bounced through the narrow valley like a pinball. Boom, 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 sparks of heat and collision splashing around. Zass, burned and flustered, stumbled and ducked, awkward as a kitchen novice avoiding oil splatters. His voice went high and thin. Viewers laughed. Ha ha! This Ultraman and his ray might as well be two different beings. It's like a pet and its tail are separate species. He's just like Taro when he was young, terrified of his own beam. Father when he was young? Mom, don't out me like that. So many people are watching. The comments poured in, part teasing, part sympathetic. The scene was novel and hilarious. Then an even more shocking moment, burned and off balance, Zass braced a hand against a nearby rock and plunged it straight into a puddle of viscous mud. Silence, then tense music. Zass froze, staring at his hand in disbelief as he pulled it out. Mud oozed down his wrist and arm, dripping onto the ground. The slimy feel made his light flare. He recoiled as if poisoned. The squelch confirmed it. This wasn't a dream. I'm dirty. I'm going to die, he thought, holding his hand up in the same stunned way old Max once had when he'd lost his memory. Only Max had raised his hand with a vacant smile. Zass lifted his trembling hand in horror. Even through the screen, the depth of his despair was clear. The viewers, however, couldn't help but laugh harder. Ha ha! I think he's about to cry. Holy cow, the color of that mud. Visually, it's practically snow. It really looks like it. 10 out of 9. It's snow. For combat warriors, getting dirty should be normal, right? What would he do facing an enemy if a little dust or mud cripples him? The video's intense soundtrack stood in sharp contrast to the laughter in the chat. Beneath the amusement, though, people were quietly curious. Could Zas, like X and Daichi, overcome this weakness? Today's failed diary. After thinking it over, Zas is actually pretty interesting. I haven't seen much fanfiction about him in the Ultra series, so I added an extra section to the special transformation arc I'd originally planned to end earlier. It felt necessary to fix how this warrior was portrayed in Ultra Galaxy Fight, the Absolute Conspiracy. I know he isn't very popular. People in the comments have asked who he is, and his fans are few compared to the big names. But since I have the chance to write, in this book at least, I want this hero to be recognized. 104. In the desolate wilderness, a conspiracy is uncovered. Kengo Manaka watched the panicked Ultra Warrior on the screen with a blank expression, more bemused than alarmed. It was just a smear of mud on his hand. How could that set someone to trembling like this? Were there really Ultra Warriors in the universe who were that squeamish about filth? He thought about his own fights. He got covered in dust and mud all the time. It made him look rough and rumpled, but it never seemed to hurt his fighting ability. He remembered his first transformation, the battle against Golba and Carmiara on Mars. It had been a 2-on-1 fight, and, with little experience, he'd been at a disadvantage. After a few exchanges, he'd been knocked down, and it happened to be pouring rain on Mars that day, rain mixing with dust into a gritty slurry. He and his opponents had wrestled in the mud, both looking beat up, but Kengo had been too focused on holding off Golba to care about how he looked. Now, thinking back, there was something oddly intimate about the memory. He had since learned he was Triga himself. After witnessing Hokuto and Minami Yuko's reunion, emotions he hadn't realized were there had quietly surfaced. And then, the thought of being close to Carmiara flickered across his mind. Wait, what kind of strange thought was that? Kengo jerked out of introspection. He was a member of the TPU. The Dark Giants were his enemy. He couldn't be thinking like that. Still, when Diaboro attacked earlier, Carmiara had helped, if only for mutual benefit. That fact nagged at him. Hey, Kengo, why are your cheeks a little red? Yuna reached out and poked his face. Are you sick? No, I'm fine. Just a little warm, he said, suddenly aware of a faster heartbeat and the flush in his cheeks. He waved her hand away, embarrassed. On the screen, the Ultra called Zas was in full panic mode. He stared left and right, then spotted a mountain spring. Very carefully, he dipped his hand into the water and began scrubbing, making sure no spot was missed, as if he were trying to wash a layer of skin away. Oh, so this is Ultra hand washing, someone quipped in the comments. Anyone drink this and it's bad luck. Wait, don't Ultra Warriors have powers to control water? Another asked. Brother man, it's why you need the Ultra Water Flow skill, came a jokey reply. Beep. Someone had started recording. A Banzan alien in the distance had filmed Zas washing his hands. He hadn't moved far from the scene. The Banzan alien was implementing a plan. His gold-swallowing scheme needed Ultra Warriors to be neutralized as disgust at filth was a convenient weakness. Later, back at his base, the Banzan alien tapped into nearby surveillance feeds and scoured local cameras. He found Katsuhito Asahi working at the Maideo gas station, the human host of Zas. On the monitor, Katsuhito's hand-washing was the same frantic motion Zas had just made. A cruel idea formed in the alien's mind. He drove to the gas station. When Katsuhito bounded over to welcome him, the Banzan alien put on a friendly smile and extended his hand. Splat! Katsuhito froze. The visitor's palm was caked in black, slimy mud. The alien stroked Katsuhito's hand, smearing the muck into the creases and under the nails, cooing, "Your fingers are so beautiful." Katsuhito let out a choked cry and snatched his hand away, rushing to the restroom to wash. The Banzan alien let him flee, satisfied. The smear test had confirmed his suspicion. Katsuhito was Zas's host. The next step in his plan would be nastier. On the broadcast, viewers gaped. Nobody expected that the Banzan alien's most depraved tactic would be to simply disgust an Ultra with mud. Yet it worked with brutal efficiency. Zas's weakness was painfully obvious and dangerously exploitable. Meanwhile, in the space garrison, Taro was briefing a hall full of younger warriors. On the Z95 Nebula, he explained, those who can overcome their fear of filth can tap immense reserves of energy and incredible combat power. Z95 Nebula is that amazing, Zeta murmured, wide-eyed. Taro's tone darkened. But the price for that power is high. For some, the difficulty in overcoming this weakness is greater than anyone imagines, especially for Zas, who's a prince. Taro's voice softened as memories crowded in. He remembered being young himself, going to Ultra Elementary School as the son of the father and mother of Ultra, sunny, bright, the prince everyone admired. He'd always been insecure, overshadowed by older brothers who were already galactic heroes while he struggled with even a basic beam attack, much like Zas. Only later did he meet Trigger, a companion who helped him more than he'd realized. If only he'd understood things sooner. He forced the thoughts away and offered the juniors a smile. Zas is a good senior to learn from. Watch closely. Back in the recorded footage, the scene changed to sunset at the Mido station. Katsuhito and his teammate, and official member of the Mido defense team, Hoshimi Toru, sat side by side. She held a flute and played a sweet, wistful tune. "You play really well, Xiao-To," Katsuhito said, watching the sun slip down. "Listening to you makes me feel braver." "You're wrong," Toru replied with a gentle smile. "Your strength doesn't come from my flute. It's something you already have." Katsuhito's shoulders slumped a little as he remembered fumbling with beam attacks. Toru had spoken with him about his fear of filth before and always encouraged him. Now it seemed he needed a more honest talk. "Do you want to try flying?" she asked softly. The next scene showed them in the night sky, inside the ugliest fighter jet in Ultraman history, Peng. Under the stars, the cockpit felt peaceful. Conversation drifted, the mood growing intimate. "Katsuhito, I've wanted to tell you." His words hitched. Would he confess? Viewers leaned forward, but then something ahead caught his eye. "Xiao-To, look," he blurted, pointing instead. Toru and the audience groaned at the missed moment. Their eyes refocused on the valley below where the Banzan alien had reverted to his massive form and stood beside a monster. The golden, Kuten puppy, the money-sucking creature the Banzan alien used to collect Earth's gold to counter his excess gas problem. Had they found a gold vein? Were they mining in secret? As everyone watched, the Golden's body began to emit a fine, powdered mist of gold dust. The cloud drifted toward the Banzan alien, and as it entered him, he trembled. The discomfort eased, then dissolved into relief. His limbs loosened. A satisfied sigh escaped him. He seemed to melt into pleasure at the sensation. The viewers' reactions ranged from shock to disbelief. These two, the Banzan alien and Golden, were literally inhaling gold to treat his ailment, and the spectacle had been caught on camera. Many descriptions in this chapter, including the title and several parts, especially the Trigger and Carmiara sections, were revised. Otherwise, it couldn't have been published. I regret the changes, but there was no other way. I am not a coward. I am not a coward. What kind of bizarre scene is this? Ah, my eyes. I'm going blind. It's not obscene, but why does this look so wrong? They're both radiating energy, but Ultraman looks normal. Why are these two so offensive to the eyes? The chat exploded with complaints as Katsuhito and Xiao-To watched the footage and realized what had happened. The Banzan alien had been draining gold from across the planet. After absorbing all that gold, the alien's toxicity had ebbed and his power had surged. They had to warn the rest of the defense team. The two hurried away. The scene cut to the next day. The defense team was still scrambling for a countermeasure when the Banzan alien struck first, crashing into the Mido gas station. He plowed through team members who tried to stop him, and then reached for Xiao-To, hands roaming in a way that made everyone's skin crawl. Katsuhito lunged forward in fury to block him, but the Banzan alien, who apparently knew Zas's weaknesses intimately, paid Katsuhito no mind. He cackled and tossed Katsuhito aside like a rag doll. Katsuhito hit the ground face first, 2 hands caked in black muck smeared across his face. Ah! The Banzan alien swaggered off, leaving Katsuhito gagging and scrubbing desperately at his skin, but he couldn't get the filth off. Outside, Xiao-To had been playing the flute for the kids when the clear sky suddenly dimmed. A shaft of light descended, and Xiao-To, with several children, was sucked up into the dark cloud. "Good heavens, that Banzan alien is full of dirty tricks," viewers cried. "He's taking hostages. Ban's an alien, you bastard. Fortunately, this was a past recording. If it were live, people joked, two giants of light who hated hostage takers would probably drop in and give him a guillotine chop and a Leo kick. But in the footage, Katsuhito arrived too late. He needed to transform to rescue Xiaotou and the children. Inside his house, the electric toothbrush whined as Katsuhito aimed it at his teeth, brushing twice before throwing his hand up in the usual transformation gesture. Nothing happened. He huffed, trying again, harder this time, but the flow of light energy just wouldn't respond. It must not be clean enough, he muttered, and brushed again until his arm ached. Still no change. He couldn't feel the light within him. Spectators on the stream tutted, just like Zero back then, unable to transform. This is worse. Katsuhito is himself. He's letting doubt get to him. He's letting doubt get to it. The real barrier wasn't the grime on his face or the toothpaste. It was his own hesitation. He bowed his head, defeated, until Xiaotou's voice slipped into his thoughts, clear as a bell. Those are your own thoughts. You're giving in. Being clean is fine, but too much. I prefer a strong, generous man. Xiaotou's words repeated over and over in Katsuhito's mind. A spark returned to his eyes. He had always told him to let go of his fears. Katsuhito called Xiaotou's name in his heart, lifted the toothbrush, and this time, light answered. The red and white giant burst forth, Zas, and shot into the night toward the mountains. From the mountain valley where Xiaotou and the children were held, a whoosh announced Zas's arrival. Everyone smiled, until laughter bubbled from the shadows. The Banzan alien revealed his plan. Guarding the hostages was a golden, the money-sucking monster, an organism made of volatile ecobomb atoms that could be detonated by an energy beam to turn the planet to ash. If detonated, the gold would be reduced to dust he could absorb. Zas would be finished. On-screen, fans and heroes alike mentally ran through countermeasures. No beams. If the golden had to be destroyed, it would have to be taken off-planet. Zas knew this. His strength lay in hard physical strikes. Leo respected his aggression, but everyone feared the alien had more tricks. Zas landed, and just as he reached for his beam, Mido fighter jets streaked in, buzzing to block him with a holographic message. Do not use beam attacks. Zas stalled, and the golden's antennae lashed out. A beam from the money-sucking monster streaked through the sky and shot down one of the jets. The plane crashed, a routine casualty. Zas's rage flared. He launched a flying tackle at the golden. He hit an invisible wall. The recoil slammed him backward into the ground. From the mountain shadows, the Banzan alien sneered. Phase 2, commence. Black sewage surged from fissures, rushing to Zas's feet. He dodged, but the sludge piled up into a bottomless lake between him and the hostages, cutting off his path. A narrator explained, the Banzan alien's barrier confined Zas to the black water and nullified his ability to fly. He couldn't simply fly over it. Any jump would leave him a sitting duck to the golden's agitation. Zas stared at Xiaotou on the other side. There was no hesitation in him. He stepped into the black water. The foul substance felt like poison. Each step shook him to the core, but he kept moving. One foot after another, he waded through the muck. His color timer began to flash red. The light inside him was draining. Ultraman! Ultraman Zas! Shouted Xiaotou and the children, voices trembling but loud. Overcome your weakness. Don't be afraid. Encouragement poured in from other worlds. Even the space garrison and Ultra veterans were shouting support. Zas, watching the screen in the Ultra training ground, blinked through his own tears as he saw himself persevere. The golden lashed out. Lightning crackled from its antenna, narrowly missing the hostages and forcing the children to huddle in fear. The Banzan alien howled with glee, sprawled on the mountainside, wild with triumph. This is what I want to see, your desperate face. Ha ha! Zas's knees sank into the sludge up to his thighs. He refused to use a beam, not because he couldn't, but because his allies had warned him. He trusted them. He forced himself to take another step forward. Then the black water grabbed him. It felt like a hand pulling him under. In an instant, the filth smothered him, sapping the last of his strength. Zas reached up with his right hand, clawing for anything to grasp, shouting Xiaotou's name in a voice that could not be heard. His fingers slipped beneath the surface. No rescue came. I'm sorry, Xiaotou. I'm sorry to everyone who cheered for me. The light in Zas's chest flared briefly, then died. He vanished beneath the oily surface. Silence fell, heavy and absolute. Despair closed over the faces of the hostages, the defense team, and every viewer watching the screen. 106. Eternal Star, he failed? The question rippled through the hearts of viewers across countless worlds. Daichi remembered how X had dissipated before. Perhaps this was what Zess was feeling now, surrounded by absolute darkness, unable to move or call for help, unable even to sense anything, only waiting for consciousness to fade. No wonder X had always hated the dark. Daichi, I'm not afraid now, X said softly. Daichi wasn't alone. He was surrounded by his CO comrades and the Ultra Warriors, even those in the Tiga world. Daichi's chest ached watching Zess sink into the black water, but somehow he could feel Zess's ultra heart still beating. Separated by galaxies and time, a faint light lingered. Zess still had people he couldn't leave behind, unfinished business keeping his spark alive. Across timelines, Ultra Warriors felt the same strange stirring. Zess still mattered. Don't give up. Zess Ultraman, they thought. Zess. At the Ultra training ground, Zess, who was at Omo, was summoned by an unexpected visitor. He turned and saw none other than Captain Zoffi, the famed leader of the Ultras. Captain Zoffi, he greeted. Zoffi nodded. The king of Ultra, wants to see you. Who wants to see me? Zess's reaction was so intense his vision went dark, and he nearly fell. Nice steadied him and shook him awake. Riku Asakura patted his shoulder to calm him. On the broadcast, the humans watching saw Zess motionless and fell silent. They remembered celebrating the 30th anniversary of the Ultra Warriors only days before, and now they watched a warrior give his life to save them. Then the camera held on a boy's face. He was the first to break the silence. Clenching his fists, he called with everything he had, "Zess! Hang in there!" His cry sparked the crowd. Children and team members joined in, chanting his name, "Zess! Zess!" But the black water remained still, impenetrable. Hoshimitoru stared into it and thought she could see Katsuhito struggling within the depths. In that moment, she understood. Katsuhito was Zess Ultraman. Katsuhito, she whispered in her heart. I believe in you. I believe the man I care for won't give up. Xiaotou raised her flute and began to play. She was human and had no power to pull Zess out herself, but she believed in him. Her soft, clear notes cut through the mire. The music didn't physically free him, but it carried Hoshimitoru's hope into Zess's heart, giving him courage. Katsuhito's consciousness was foggy, but he recognized the tune. Xiaotou's flute, he thought. It's still so beautiful. Too bad I'll never hear it again. The thought stabbed at him. Was he willing to leave Xiaotou like this and let the Banzan alien destroy Earth? He wasn't. He felt his own weakness, the shame of a prince from the Z95 Nebula who feared a little filth. Father, Grandpa, I've disgraced you, he thought, on the verge of tears. Then Xiaotou's words slipped into his mind. Being clean is good, but too extreme isn't. You're a man. Don't shrink back because of a little dirt. Don't limit yourself. The clarity those words brought cut through the darkness. Xiaotou told him that his strength didn't come from her flute. It was inside him all along. She wanted him to become an official member so that between them, her voice trailed off in his memory, but the thought kept him from surrendering. I won't give up, Katsuhito resolved. Even someone like him was trusted and loved by Xiaotou. He strained to rise. Mud and blackness flowed around him like venomous snakes, trying to snuff his light. I want to get out. I want to stop the Banzan alien and protect Earth. I want to protect Xiaotou, who trusts me and whom I love. He pushed with everything he had, but the prison still held. Then familiar voices and cheers reached him, not clearly as words, but as warmth. Xiaotou's music had carried the hopes and encouragement of his human friends. From countless worlds, viewers' support surged toward him. He could not hear each voice, but he felt their warmth and belief. Even someone like me is cared for, he thought. How can I let them down? How can I give up because of a puddle of black water? Tiny sparks of light gathered in his ultra heart. Power flowed through him, filling every part of his being. The black water trembled. The ripples swelled, as if heralding a hero's rebirth. The light within him grew until it reached a threshold. Then, crack, a sound like breaking glass split the silence. The mental shackle that had bound his power shattered. Near the dark pool, Mido team members who had long since sunk into despair felt a change. A miracle unfolded. Zess's theme surged, and ripples spread from the center of the black water. The water level rose as something moved up from below. The motion grew violent. Dazzling starlight burst from the void, converging on the churning center, accelerating with every moment. A thunderous roar exploded. A red and white figure shot out of the dark pool and into the sky. The 100-meter-deep lake's center hollowed out, revealing the muddy bottom. Water splashed and waves surged outward as if the heavens themselves were pouring down. With unprecedented splendor, the Ultra Warrior from the Z95 Nebula had overcome his inner hurdle and returned to the battlefield. ZS Infinite Form. 107. I am Xincheng, and I am above Juliangliang Island. I am Xincheng, and I am above Juliangliang Island. What's with this strangely familiar feeling? Mebius watched Zas on the screen, surprised. Even through the feed, he could sense the almost endless energy within Zas. That didn't mean Zas currently matched his infinite form. Only that, compared to ordinary warriors, Zas seemed never to run out of energy. That trait alone was rare and enviable among Ultra Warriors. As expected of a warrior from the Z95 Nebula, Mebius said sincerely. He was eager to see how Zas would handle the fight. Zas rose from the black water completely spotless. Not a speck of grime clung to him. Zah! He flipped, landed behind Golden, money-sucking monster, and delivered a devastating kick. The heavy blow sent the already larger monster stumbling. Then came a flurry of merciless strikes, each aimed for Golden, money-sucking monster's head. No beams? Fine, I'll beat you to death, you son of a bitch. Golden howled in pain and fury, spewing jets of flame from its enormous mouth toward Zas's head. But Zas was nimble, rolling aside to dodge, then exploiting the opening while Golden fired. He leaped high and brought his foot down with full force. Leo and Taro slapped hands in approval. Boom! Amid the cheers and the especially loud applause from a certain admirer of broken horns, Golden, money-sucking monster's huge shoulder horn flew off. The Banzan alien, who had been quiet until now, suddenly felt uneasy. His mind swam with confusion. How did the kid suddenly get better? But he didn't waste time complaining. He assumed giant form on the battlefield and moved to pin Zas in a pincer attack with Golden. 2 against 1, an alien and a monster ganging up. Jack's eyes lit up as he watched. Zas, don't disappoint me, he said. Several thunderous impacts echoed from the screen as Zas was caught off guard and knocked down. He took the hits, but when he hit the ground, he found an opening. I am the 30th anniversary commemorative work. All my stats are maxed out. 2-on-1 is a buff for me. The Banzan alien and Golden both thought they had him. Each charged a finishing beam from opposite sides. Just as they fired, Zas rolled, timing it perfectly, and dodged. The 2 beams struck each other and rebounded, hitting the attackers and leaving them stunned. My turn. Zas seized the moment, raining blows down on the Banzan alien's massive head. The pain and humiliation he had endured, his loved one kidnapped, Earth burned, friends injured, himself degraded, fueled his rage. His punches and kicks cut through the air with brutal intensity. Within minutes, the Banzan alien was on the ground. Golden recovered and tried to rush in, but Zas was waiting. A headshot kick, then a brutal knee that released a blinding electric shock, double damage. Golden, money-sucking monster, went down and lay motionless. Well fought. Homage. It's all homage. So strong. Every attack aimed for the head, as expected. Cheers erupted from countless spectators. The battle reached its climax as the Banzan alien, desperate, raised both hands and unleashed its strongest move. Countless golden energy bullets filled the sky, engulfing Zas in dazzling light. For an instant, the blaze startled him. Then he moved. Zas spun like a top. The high-intensity whirlwind scattered the golden bullets before they reached him. Take this. Tornado destroys the parking lot, he shouted, his kick lancing through the Banzan alien before it could react. The struck bones shattered to powder. The alien's breathing stopped. The blow sent the Banzan alien hurtling out of Earth's atmosphere, carried off into the void. Good boy. This little guy definitely needs to learn my flying kick. Leo watched in admiration. The fight was over. Zas didn't forget Golden. He lifted the fallen opponent, carried it into space, and hurled it far from Earth. Then he drew himself up, raised a hand, and fired the specium ray, this time perfectly straight, as steady as his resolve. Special Transformation Chapter 4, Zas Chapter, ends here. Yay! Countless worlds cheered. Watching a warrior grow, Seeing him transform from a germaphobe and amateur into a qualified fighter brought the same satisfaction as raising a character in a game. Katsuhito's growth gave hope to many who had lost their way. Overcoming fear is a universal part of growth, and the novices led by Zeta were ecstatic to see it. Zas himself wasn't joining the cheers. He stood nervously before a legendary figure, the Great King. "How are your father and grandfather?" the Great King asked gently, sending out an unseen calming force that eased Zas's tension. "They're both fine, thank you for asking," Zas replied. "Good. Go find your companions. Staying with an old man like me will only make you nervous," the Great King chuckled. After Zas flew off toward the training ground, the Great King's voice echoed in his mind. The Z95 Nebula has a suitable successor. On the other side, the audience that had been excitedly discussing Toothbrush Superman heard the next announcement. Next inventory video will be played. Light of Hope? The audience leaned in. To be called a Light of Hope singled someone out. This warrior must have something that set them apart. The screen shifted again. Preheating video will be played. Shinjo, everything is normal here. The preheating footage began before the theme even appeared, and viewers across worlds were puzzled. Who is Shinjo? A new Ultra Warrior? What does everything is normal mean? Tiga World. Hey, it's me! Shinjo grinned, his face splitting with pride. He'd figured it out. Every human appearing in the inventory videos was someone noteworthy. He might not match Ultraman Orb in physical combat, nor Akito Hijiri in technical skill, but he was here for a reason. Something about him warranted being cataloged. "Look at you, so smug," Hori huffed. He didn't believe Shinjo could be Tiga. His manner didn't fit. Daigo, however, was nervous. His world was being inventoried. Did that mean something about Tiga? A small island flashed on the screen. Their expressions changed. Carrara Island. The footage cut to a bright yellow modern fighter jet, the Guts Wing, skimming over the sea. In the cockpit, Shinjo reported to command with a straight face. "This is Shinjo. I'm over Carrara Island. Everything is normal here." No sooner had he spoken than a piercing warning alarm blared through the cockpit. Red warning lights flooded the instruments, and the Guts Wing began to shake violently. Viewers reacted in confusion. The plane started shaking right after he said everything was normal? Were the words cursed? Was this the start of a crash landing? Author's note: writing inventory pieces can be lucrative. Cover a few major characters and their famous scenes, and you can easily span 100 chapters with steady traffic. When I started the Zas arc, I expected many readers to drop off. Looking at the analytics, there are indeed fewer readers. Is that discouraging? A little. But when I decided to vindicate Zas, the warrior ruined by Sakamoto and Ashiki, I felt I couldn't give up. I'm not doing anything wrong, so why worry? Compared to when I wrote about X and Daichi, I didn't want to embarrass myself. Part of why I write is practical, earn a meal. But when I wrote about Ace and Minami Yuko's reunion, those characters became closer to me. I couldn't get past that. Still, reality matters. So I stayed up late to finish Zas and released it all at once to stop the bleeding. As for dozing off during the day and affecting work, I admit I'm used to slacking off. The transformation chapter only covered Zas's first movie and voiced some grievances about how Sakamoto and Ashiki ruined the character. I plan to save the second movie's battle against Zard, the longest beam clash in history, for later, along with Noza and Ginza, in a collection of the longest and shortest beam clashes. From the next chapter, I'll introduce the older Ultra Warriors and bring in Trigger Boy. I intend to rewrite Trigger's history, which Yuya handled poorly. How exactly I'll do that is still in the works. I had a lot on my mind tonight, so I rambled. Sorry about that. I've written almost 10,000 words. If I don't rest, I'll collapse. Good night. You are a true hero of our TPC. You are a true hero of our TPC. I get it. Based on the usual video pattern, it's always suppress first, then elevate. Exactly. This chaotic scene is just to show off these two people's special abilities, like reverse speech or some insane piloting skill. That would make sense. The humans in these videos always have something unusual about them. The video even said Shinjo is TPC's ace pilot. Maybe one of them is Ultraman's human host. Remember Hokuto? He transformed after a plane crash, didn't he? If they're really referencing Hokuto, maybe Shinjo and Daigo combined to transform. They're both pretty handsome, but if they combined and transformed in rings, that would be something. The chat exploded with speculation. From the previous compilation videos, everyone had learned the formula. The humans who appeared in them always had something remarkable. Even if they weren't Ultraman's host, they had to be the type who could fall 100 meters into water and walk away. Otherwise, you wouldn't even get cast as an extra. Eyes glued to the screen, the audience waited for Shinjo or Daigo to show off. The video opened with alarms blaring in the cockpit. Shinjo, who had just reported his status, shifted into a guarded expression. "What's happening?" he asked. Daigo in the back glanced at the dashboard and replied coolly, "The systems are malfunctioning, strong electromagnetic interference." Shinjo's years of flight experience clicked into place. The Guts wing had lost automatic control. "Switch to manual. I'll take everything." Daigo's arm was injured. To get them out of this, he had to rely on Shinjo, the ace pilot of TPC. "I've released the controls," Daigo called out. Shinjo's gaze scanned the instruments in the sky, analyzing so fast his emotions flickered across his face, from confidence to doubt to outright despair. In 2 seconds, a dozen thoughts blazed through his head and crystallized into a single shouted name. "Daigo! Here!" Daigo answered, expecting Shinjo to start doing what he did best, show off in a crisis. Shinjo looked up at him, bright eyes suddenly bewildered. After a beat, he said in the most resigned voice imaginable, "It's useless." Before Daigo could respond, the Guts wing's center of gravity lurched, and the jet went into a nosedive. The sudden weightlessness made both men scream. Then, whoosh, the wing hit the sea with a wet explosive crash, and their screams were swallowed in the noise. The waves calmed as if nothing had happened. Viewers stared. That was it? A plane crash? Where was the promised display of piloting heroics? Other defense teams at least always put up a token fight, laser barrages, heroic last stands. Even guys had staged noble sacrifices, but these two, no theatrics at all. What the heck? Back at the TPC base, Shinjo looked like he'd seen a ghost. Every other human they had encountered in the compilation clips had been either technologically on par with Hikari or a martial arts phenom who could overpower aliens. How did he, of all people, come off so incompetent? Were they really picking his most humiliating crash scenes to toy with him? "Relax," Daigo said, clapping his friend on the shoulder. "Be glad. If the videos follow the usual pattern, they'll give you a great moment later. You're our TPC hero." Shinjo was half convinced, half skeptical, and kept watching. The video didn't end. It shifted. Shinjo was now seen in the cockpits of different craft. Guts Wing 2, Shirayuki, various armored vehicles. It didn't matter front seat or back, main control or auxiliary. The result was always the same. Smoke trailing, systems flaming, plunging into the distance, crash after crash. Sky, ground, space, underwater. He slammed into everything. The audience was stunned, and the craft weren't even limited to military hardware anymore. Then the scene switched to a playground. A behemoth rampaged through it, barrier monster Gaddy. The crowds fled in panic, but one person stepped ahead to block the monster. Shinjo. He was in civilian clothes, apparently on vacation. The Guts jet's attacks were bouncing off Gaddy's barrier, and Shinjo's face was tight with anxiety. He spotted the Ferris wheel in the monster's path. His sister and other tourists were trapped on it. "This is bad." He surged forward against the fleeing tide, shouting to draw Gaddy's attention. "Come here! Come to me! Come on, you bastard!" But the fleeing humans drowned out his shouts. Gaddy gave him a cold glance and continued toward the Ferris wheel. The camera lingered on a nearby boy, Haruki, whose sister was also on the Ferris wheel, with Shinjo's sister Mayumi. Shinjo's voice echoed like a memory. "As a boy, there will come a day when you have to face what you're afraid of. You can't back down." Haruki pressed his lips together. Watching Shinjo struggle, something in him steadied. He declared, "Okay," and dashed to the go-kart track. The next moment, every viewer's pupils shrank. The kid jumped into a bumper car and charged straight at Gaddy, muttering, "I'm not afraid! I'm not afraid!" What? Driving a go-kart to bait a giant monster? Were they suicidal, or did they think daring a vehicle might trigger a combining with Ultraman? The room went silent. To everyone's shock, Gaddy was actually attracted. Apparently, it intended to use the boy's body as an egg-laying host, and for some strange reason, thought someone bold like Haruki would make better nourishment than a Ferris wheel. It abandoned the Ferris wheel and focused on the bumper car instead. Haruki, stop! It's too dangerous, Shinjo cried, sprinting after him. But Gotti was faster. A massive foot slammed down, shadow swallowing Shinjo. He stumbled and rolled, barely avoiding the stomp. As an older brother, you have to protect your sister, right? Shinjo raged inwardly as he kept going. Gotti whipped at Haruki's head with a giant lash. Here, here. But Haruki stayed calm, pulling a flashy drift and dodging the attack. You can't hit me, you idiot, Gotti screamed, whipping again and again and missing each time. What kind of driving skills were those? Shinjo had the thought, then shoved it aside because the bigger fear was watching Haruki get himself killed. Haruki, don't be reckless. Shinjo stopped the go-kart, shoved Haruki into the passenger seat, and flopped into the driver's seat himself. Switch to manual. I'll take everything. A sentence that seemed to run through the minds of those watching. But this wasn't a fighter jet, just a bumper car, so what could go wrong? Everyone expected Shinjo to shine. Taro, far away in the land of light, watched and smiled at the thought. He remembered scooting around and taunting an Imperial alien once. Perhaps this ace pilot's skills were worth watching. At the Guts base, Shinjo covered his face. Something about this felt ominous. The rest of Guts looked bewildered. Wasn't this supposed to be his moment? Shinjo steered the cart and drew Gatti away from the Ferris wheel. TPC support finally arrived. Armed with specially made liquid nitrogen rounds, 2 Guts fighter jets broke through Gatti's barrier and began hitting its physical body. The audience breathed easier. Guts Wing 1 was even piloted by Daigo alone. He flew steadily and confidently. Maybe Daigo really was the reason Shinjo crashed so often. Maybe Daigo's steady skill made Shinjo look bad. Then reality slapped everyone in the face. Gatti lashed out and struck the side wing of Guts Wing 1 dead on. Black smoke poured out and alarms screamed. Daigo, as if expecting it, calmly reported the damage and steered the craft toward the ground. Rina in Guts Wing 2, by contrast, flew smoothly and dodged Gatti's attacks with ease. The audience concluded, Shinjo and Daigo are the same kind of pilot, both catastrophically crash-prone. But Daigo's calm was unnerving, almost inhuman. He seemed utterly unconcerned about crashing or dying, just like on Koryu Island. A theory crept through viewers' minds. Maybe both of them were the type to bounce back from any wreck. Back in the video, Shinjo was drawing Gatti away on the cart when a thunderous explosion rang out behind them. Dirt and rocks flew. Gatti had resumed attacking. Shinjo swerved hard. Get down, he shouted, pressing Haruki's head down. They hunched low on the cart as a whip tore the air above them, missing their heads by inches. They breathed a sigh of relief and looked up, only to see a roadblock dead ahead. The cart had nowhere to turn. With a crash, it hit the barricade and flipped, tumbling into the roadside ditch. Ah! They were thrown clear. The speed had been low enough that neither was seriously injured, but Shinjo twisted his leg and white smoke curled from the rear of the cart, and then the audience at last understood. This was Shinjo's special ability, not just crashing jets, but flipping bumper cars with equal enthusiasm. While other defense teams might show polished skill, Shinjo was unique. No matter what vehicle, he had an uncanny knack for total catastrophe. If you said his skill was decent, he'd crash 7 or 8 times out of 10. If you said his skill was terrible, he'd somehow still survive with ridiculous luck that made his life seem built like a tank. Contestant number 2, Daigo, had also caught everyone's eye now. Where they'd once assumed Daigo was being dragged down by Shinjo, it became clear they were the same chaotic breed of pilot. Taro, watching in the space garrison, shook his head. Their piloting wasn't good. He remembered his own run-in with an Imperial alien, how he'd routed it without even transforming. He hoped no one ever dug up that memory. Then the camera focused on the center of the frame, and Shinjo's battered face faded. A giant figure filled the screen. It looked vaguely like the Triga they'd seen before, red, silver, and purple, with a circular timer on its chest like a gem that glowed soft blue. But the lines were simpler, and the face more mature. The resemblance to Triga was unmistakable, but also different. One was youthful and gentle. This one was older, steadier. It's him. Mitsukuni breathed, staring at the screen in Triga Spacetime's Shizuma Foundation command. He had seen the hero who had defeated the evil god Ganathor and saved Earth and humanity 30 years ago. He never thought he'd see him again. In the TPU command center, Kengo watched too, puzzled. Before his own first transformation, Mitsukuni had once told him about a brave ancient hero who broke fate's shackles. Could this be that figure? He felt a strange kinship, an echo. Mitsukuni had known this warrior for a long time. If this Ultraman had existed long before Tiga, might Triga's birth be related? Kengo's eyes narrowed as he finally said the name aloud, slow and reverent. Ultraman Tiga. P.S. This chapter is a double update, over 4,000 words, because I was exhausted when I got back today and my brain wasn't cooperating. 2 transitional chapters, even as a double, feel a little slapdash, so I'll add another chapter during the day. My personal rule is at least 2 updates a day, regardless of length. That's all for now. I need sleep. I hope I get reincarnated into Narnia and live happily ever after. I really don't want to work. 109. Life will live forever. I once couldn't tell whether I was a human named Kengo Manaka or a light named Triga. Kengo watched Daigo's figure on the screen. Ever since he discovered he could become Triga, a single question had nagged at him. Was he human or an Ultraman? The endless tide of enemies had made the weight of responsibility on his shoulders feel heavier and heavier. That brilliant power sometimes strangled him. In those moments, he felt like light, not a person. Diaboرو's appearance had even driven him to prepare to fight to the death. Libut's arrival and Yuna's companionship helped him clear many doubts. Then he realized he wasn't simply light or Ultraman Triga. He was also human, a friend to Akito and Yuna, a son raised by his mother. Seeing Daigo on the screen, who somehow resembled him, Kengo wanted to know whether the senior had ever faced the same problem and how he had dealt with it. The video began. Under a dim sky, a streak of bright light slashed through the heavens and hung over a forest. Its shape was strange. Unlike any human-made craft, it seemed more like some primeval or alien artifact. It hovered for a moment and then dissolved into the void. The camera panned down. Under the night sky, 2 flowers swayed gently in the breeze. Their outer petals were white, the main petals bright yellow, and 5 small orange petals clustered in the center. The deliberate shot made it clear this was no ordinary bloom. "What is this flower?" someone murmured. In the Guts command center, the members stared at the screen in confusion. No one seemed to have any memory of it. Daigo watched quietly. Had his future self found an answer? Was he human or light? Across the Kingdom universe, Trigger sneered. He had pored over countless histories and documents, and among them he had learned about this flower. To many civilizations, Jijera was a test. A single choice could mean survival or annihilation. To Tregir, it was another demonstration of living beings' tendency toward chaos. Taro, he thought, remembering the young Ultra who had once raved about humanity's virtues. I told you human desires are ugly, but you only saw their light. When their fires of desire reach their peak, they can even consume an Ultra warrior. He pictured Taro, freshly arrived from Earth, smiling and talking about friendship with humans and teaming up against monsters. That fervent joy had once irritated Trigger. Now it felt bitterly ironic. Gijera will make your words look like a joke, he thought. Back in the footage, the scene returned to the Guts field. Strange plasma signatures pulsed where the flowers grew, catching the team's attention. Everyone decided to investigate. On the grass, Daigo, Shinjo, and Lina searched with professional detectors. Soon a ring of brightly blooming flowers drew their gaze. "What kind of flowers are these?" Lina asked. Daigo walked over. The instant he saw them, something ancient and sleeping in his DNA stirred. It felt like the real DNA within him had moved. A doomsday vision flashed through his head. Ruins choked with weeds, every other living thing gone, the sky consumed by flames. Only huge flowers swayed in that devastation. Is this the end of an ancient civilization? Is it connected to this flower? He thought. He pushed deeper into the woods, investigating. Suddenly, small hands covered his eyes. Guess who? Who is it? Daigo said, not in the mood for games. He gently brushed the hands away and saw a blue-clad girl. To his surprise, she had the same flower pinned to her head. What is this flower? He asked. Jijera, she replied. Deep underground, a bud the size of a heart throbbed. Yellow lightning danced along its branches and climbed upward. In an instant, the Jujera scattered clouds of yellow, powdery pollen, their spores. Viewers watching the footage felt the effect as if it were real. Those with pollen allergies swayed and covered their noses. People imagined the scratchy irritation of rhinitis. Lena, standing nearby, inhaled the pollen and immediately seemed transported. A dreamy smile spread across her face. Shinjo, hit by the pollen as well, tossed aside his detector, drew idle circles with his left hand, and drifted toward the flowers with a lecherous grin. Daigo heard the girl beside him laugh. "It's starting." "Huh?" he said, puzzled. "Why don't you come to the dream world?" she asked curiously. The audience watching the footage realized the pollen had a hypnotic effect. Everything about the scene felt wrong, and brows knitted across the room. Then the oppressive mood broke, and the footage grew eerie. Daigo, sensing danger, rushed to Shinjo and Lena. Shinjo was like a child playing hide-and-seek with some imaginary sister, whispering, "Hey, I'm here!" "It's really you, that smiling guy from TPC," someone exclaimed. "Shinjo, what's wrong with you?" Daigo shook him, but couldn't wake him. Lena nearby clutched 2 Gijera blooms to her chest, inhaling the pollen with a blissful, intoxicated smile. "Once you go into the dream world, no one wants to come back. We're going to perish anyway. Isn't it better to be comfortable?" The blue-clad girl said calmly, not understanding why Daigo was worried. Tregier's laugh echoed in Kengo's mind as if he had predicted this. "Jijera can make people like this," he heard, thinking of his own Ruruyi, flower, which looked strikingly similar to Jijera. Kengo wondered if there might be a connection. But more than that, he wanted to know what Daigo would do. Ultra Warriors shared a special bond. The moment he saw Daigo, Kengo felt something in him reach out. He knew, in a way, that he was watching Daigo. In the footage, Daigo, sensing the hazard, escorted the 3 back to the base. Hori, Guts' ace scientist, examined a Jijera specimen in an isolation chamber and declared with certainty that it was not of Earth origin. "That's not true," Dina interrupted, hopping nearby. 30 million years ago, Jijera bloomed on Earth." 30 million years, Hori repeated in surprise. "Dina, have you seen it?" Dina shook her head, then dropped words that stunned everyone watching. "When humanity is about to perish, Jijera appears. My father went to other lands," she said. Daigo remembered the inscription from the time machine. Some people perished, some moved to other lands. Confusion rippled through the room, and then the footage showed the scope of the problem. The whole world was being affected by Jijera. The pollen began to spread, and countless people inhaled it. On a monitor, Munakata, wearing a black tank top and shorts, struck flamboyant poses in front of a mirror, admiring his muscles with an easy smile. A pot of Jijera sat on the table beside him. The Guts members stiffened. Even Commander Munakata had been influenced. In his dreamlike state, Munakata didn't want to be a commander. He wanted only to be a buff, carefree brother. "Why does Commander Munakata have surveillance at home?" someone blurted, bewildered. "If Jijera keeps spreading its pollen like this," Captain Iruma began, voice low, "it will be very happy," Dina said with a calm face. "And then?" Iruma asked. Dina's answer chilled everyone. A painless demise. 110. Illusory happiness. "What the hell?" In the Guts command center, Munakata's face went dark. He had just seen himself behave embarrassingly in the dream sequence. That perfect scene from my imagination, and it's just me playing philosopher in front of a mirror. Shinjo frowned and scratched his head, half amused, half curious. He wondered who Munakata had been dreaming with, Mayumi, or perhaps a future girlfriend. The long single Shinjo felt, inexplicably, a flutter of anticipation at the thought. Captain Iruma, however, wore a tense expression. She couldn't understand how a little girl could say such despairing things in such an innocent voice. Daigo frowned, too. The appearance of Jijera in the footage meant humanity might be on the brink of extinction. "If we just take out Jijera, wouldn't that solve everything?" someone asked. No. The denial rang flat. The scene they were watching continued. On the video, hearing Dina's words, Captain Iruma's smile froze and her pupils narrowed. Before she could react, something worse descended. Outside the TPC base on the sea, a terrifying sight appeared. Jijera, the so-called super-ancient plant. Its target was Earth, preparing to hypnotize all of humanity. Pollen spread across the globe, and even the TPC base fell under its influence. One by one, TPC personnel succumbed, their faces lighting up with smiling bliss. This is bad, the viewers in the command center murmured. The spread was too fast and too mysterious. There was no time to mount a defense. Some pinned their hopes on Guts and on Captain Aruma's leadership, but then the footage took a humiliating turn. "Woohoo! Fly, fly!" the transformed Aruma shrieked. The composed captain they all respected had become a giggling little girl, waving her hands and racing around the command center with a beaming grin. In the research lab, Hori, suit and all, was affected. So was Director Sawai. When Neri rushed in to help Munakata, he ended up playing a bizarre, lewd wrestling game with him at home. The contrast between the gravity of the situation and the absurd behavior on screen left the viewers stunned and unkindly amused. "Everyone's gone mad," one viewer laughed. "My royal powers surging. I want to join their wrestling party." They snickered at the sight of the dignified Captain Aruma behaving so childish, and even Aruma, peering up from the monitor, felt her cheeks warm with embarrassment. Around her, people tried to suppress their laughter, and she dropped her eyes, lips pressed together. Back on the screen, the scene darkened. Dina let out a sudden, cold laugh. "So pitiful, Daigo. Why don't you come with them to the world of dreams, all alone?" Her words cut off as she slumped to the floor, unconscious. "What's wrong with her?" Daigo asked, shaking her to wake her, but she remained limp. The automatic door hissed open, and a man in a blue robe stepped in. "Who are you?" Daigo demanded. "My name is Luke. I am this girl's father," the man said. No sooner had he spoken than Captain Aruma, still in that strange, carefree mood, fluttered by like a butterfly and ran out with an utterly girlish expression. The tension in the room briefly shattered, then the music resumed on the video. Luke, however, moved quickly. He lifted Dina's head and with a clinical twist of his hands, opened the back of her skull. "Holy, lift up her skull!" Viewers cried in shock as the back of Dina's head flipped open to reveal a technological brain. Of course she wasn't affected. She's not human. "She's a bio-cyborg," someone guessed. Daigo stared at the mechanical network where a brain should be, his surprise mixed with unease. Luke didn't chatter. He inserted a tube of red liquid into the exposed brain and closed Dina's head again. A few beeps, and Dina revived, though she still looked half asleep and numb. "What was that?" Daigo demanded. "Jujera's essence," Luke said. "You injected Jujera into her?" Daigo could not hide his disbelief. The same substance that hypnotized entire populations had been drawn up like medication. Luke sat, face grave. "Jujera has two major effects. One, as you know, is to immerse humans in a dream of happiness. The other is to keep brain cells permanently active." He looked each of them in the eye. Eternal life. The idea made the viewers in other worlds sit up straighter. For short-lived species, the promise of immortality was overwhelmingly tempting. Yet knowing Jujera's nature gave many pause. Only a few might be willing to become its herald. Luke continued as Dina regained focus. "Those who accept Jera do not die because they become emissaries of Jujera itself." He guided Dina to stand. "We should leave." "Aren't we staying on this planet longer?" Dina asked, sounding regretful. Luke shook his head. "With Jujera blooming and the planet condemned, why stay? Outrageous. No one would want to destroy humanity," Daigo said, indignation burning in him. "Humans will destroy themselves," Luke replied quietly. As if on cue, the footage showed Jujera, deep underground, suddenly mutate. Vines and roots ripped through the earth and rose into the air. The giant plant sprawled across the terrain like a monstrous living thing. A massive bud swelled and readied itself to bloom. 30 million years have passed, and humanity has not progressed, Luke said, voice cold. Once Jujera blooms, everyone will regard the world as paradise. What then is the meaning of the Giant of Light? He fixed Daigo with a steady gaze. For a people immersed in illusory happiness and spiritual decay, the Giant of Light becomes unnecessary. And when the last to come down, the terrifying darkness, the great nightmare, descends, it will annihilate everything. The name Giant of Light hit the viewers hard. On the screen, Daigo alone was unaffected by Jujera. Luke had practically spelled it out. Unless Daigo wasn't human, he had a 90 to 100% chance of being Ultraman Taiga. The unknown, terrifying darkness Luke mentioned left viewers wondering, was Alien Emperor somehow rising again? Daigo's heart thudded. He had not expected to be revealed like this. It might have been manageable if only people from other worlds saw the footage, different space-times. But if his teammates recognized him, Daigo felt a cold weight of dread. He looked up and found several members staring at him in stunned silence. After a long pause, Captain Aruma's expression softened in a complicated way. Daigo, she said quietly, you weren't affected by Jijera. Daigo's mouth went dry. He had no neat answer. We noticed before, Hori added. Ultra warriors sometimes hide among the defense teams. I thought about it. Every time a monster shows up, you disappear and Ultraman Tiga appears. He rubbed his temples. And that time you sent light to Ace. What we saw were small sparkles, but you sent a laser-like beam. The timing's too coincidental. Right. You can't be a monster or alien emperor, can you? No, impossible, right? Others murmured, eyes fixed on him. Daigo realized there was no point hiding. He nodded, quiet and resigned. It's really you, Rina whispered, covering her mouth. Captain Iruma chose her words carefully. I understand. Anyone carrying such a secret would find it hard to confess. She looked at him and asked the question everyone wanted answered. But before she could finish, Daigo cut in, voice raw with feeling. Because I'm scared. What? The room seemed to stop. For a moment, everyone thought they must have misheard. Daigo, who served as the human host of Ultraman Tiga and one of Guts' finest, just admitted he was scared. 111. The path of a hero is not always lonely, but loneliness is always present. From the moment Daigo merged with the Tiga stone statue, confusion had never left him. He tried over and over to look at things from an Ultra Warrior's perspective, but he was, at heart, an emotional human. That didn't change the fact that he felt everything deeply. What worried him more was how others would see him. Once his identity was exposed, his Guts teammates, his colleagues at TPC, and people all over the world, how would they react? Could he still walk among them as Daigo Madoka, or would he have to leave Earth like the elders from the Land of Light he had seen in old records? There was no Land of Light in this universe, and as a son of humanity, Daigo had nowhere else to go. If humans discovered their longtime protector was actually one of them, what would they make of Tiga? A god? A weapon? A fellow human? Or merely a tool to be taken for granted? Daigo couldn't imagine it, and he dared not think about it for long. He knew well the variety of human hearts. He had learned that during his 2 battles with Carioloid, humanity's light of hope had driven him, but its darker impulses could tear at him as well. He could not abandon all of humanity because a few betrayed it. Tiga might be a god of light, but Daigo was not. That uncertainty gnawed at him, especially after the Carioloid fight. Was he light? Was he human? He had watched old records and finally understood there were warriors like X and Zero who guided and encouraged their human hosts. Even Zeta had stood by his host, but Tiga had never spoken to him. Tiga was light. Only light. How should he use that power? Was he worthy of it? Daigo lost count of how many nights he'd asked himself that. He had slowly accepted that he would have to walk this path alone. Daigo. Captain Iruma listened to his story and looked at him gravely. When I first saw Tiga, I thought I was looking at a god, she said. But later I realized he had feelings too. He mourned Sheila's sacrifice, and he felt sorrow when Obiko chose death. I wondered then, could Tiga be human as well? She patted his shoulder and smiled. Now I'm glad. He's neither just one or the other. He's both light and human. That's right. We're not going to dissect you for research, Hori joked, clapping Daigo on the left shoulder. Me neither, Shinjo said, slapping his other shoulder. Lena lifted her head. Her dark eyes shone wetly, the single word on her lips plain and clear, trust. Neri smiled and nodded. Under their warm gazes, Daigo's clenched fists loosened. He let out a choked laugh he hadn't expected. Thank you, all of you. You are both light and human. The first time he heard that, Daigo hadn't grasped its meaning. Hearing Captain Iruma say it now brought a sudden clarity to him. Neri's eyes then widened as if he suddenly remembered something. Wait, Neri said. Do you remember what that ancient machine said before? What did it say? Everyone turned to him, curious. Neri made a mock fist. It said something like, Big Bone stewed into soup. Daigo stewed into soup? What kind of nonsense is that? I couldn't make it out clearly at the time. Later, when I heard Daigo in the report, I thought I must have misheard. Neri's face lit up. Thinking back, she clearly said, Daigo turns into light. Silence fell over the command room. Then a few people burst out laughing. You kid, one called. I thought we were having big bone soup tonight. Daigo's smile froze. The weight of what had already been revealed to the world pressed on him again. Don't worry, a gentle voice filled the minds of the 7 gathered people. Daigo looked up at the screen above the command room, startled. Someone was communicating directly, and the tone carried no hostility. In it, he felt something akin to the power of light. You must believe that your companions will keep your secret. Companions keep secrets? What did that mean? While they tried to make sense of it, a phone rang. This is Captain Iruma. Director Sawai, what's the situation? She answered. Daigo felt his heart race. After a moment of conversation, Captain Iruma hung up and allowed herself a small smile. You don't have to worry anymore, she told him. Captain, do you mean? Daigo began, and the voice cut in again. Since you are unwilling, I will conceal your identity for you. Apart from you 7, ordinary people in this world will be like Neri was at first, unable to perceive you clearly in the footage, unless you choose to reveal yourself later. At last, the knot in Daigo's chest loosened. The 7 exchanged relieved glances and sat down to watch the video in peace. Hori raised a brow. This development feels familiar, he said. What do you mean? Lena asked. Will we be able to combine and transform into a new form of Tiga, like that guy's team? Hori grinned. The number of us is right. Where do we get Hikari from? Does the Land of Light do inter-universal shipping? Ahem, I'm a scientist, Hori continued, mock-haughty. Substituting for Hikari shouldn't be a problem. Then make me some new gear. I want a Z-riser, Shinjo interrupted. What did you say? The Giant of Light is no longer needed. While they reveled in jokes and relief, far away other Ultraman felt Luke's words settle awkwardly. If humans fell into a comforting illusion, if they no longer needed the Giants of Light, what then? Many Ultramen had no right to interfere with human choices, but could they accept those choices without mourning the loss of their purpose? Younger generations who had never walked among humans didn't know what to decide. If the protected no longer needed their protectors, what meaning did their deeds hold? Confusion is a dangerous thing. Once a thought takes hold, it spreads and deepens, hard to rein in. All of you, look up! Ace's thunderous roar cut through the uncertainty like a bell. A crimson cape billowed, and the Ultra Brothers stood together on the high platform of the space garrison. Ace stood at the front, anger and passion in his voice as he pointed at the bowed youths. What are those looks for? What are those bowed heads supposed to mean? Can you solve these problems by lowering your eyes? From the moment you chose to be warriors, you must be resolute. In battles fought alone, even when you lose control, remain strong and compassionate. Keep a burning heart. That is how an Ultra Warrior lives. Even if that trust is betrayed 1,000 times. If you want to be a hero, you must have the courage to endure loneliness, even if you are the only one who knows the pain. Ace's words struck them like thunder. 7, ever gentle, encouraged the juniors. I believe each of you has the conviction to finish this race, he said softly. Their spirits, dimmed and wandering, began to flare anew. Brother Ace, Zeta murmured, looking at Ace from behind. He realized then the hardships Ace had borne were far greater than any broadcast could show. Not just Ace, within every towering defender there were hidden sorrows. Brother Man spoke, voice steady. Life is complex. Even when you are excluded or overlooked, when you stand at your loneliest, there will always be people who hold hope for you. Ask for it, and you will receive a strong response. Don't forget the 5 vows I taught you, Jack added, fist raised. Neos, who had been to Earth, nodded. He remembered a time when he had felt utterly alone and a child had come to cheer him on. To that child he was light, a hero. To him, the child was the same, a bright, human hope. Someone watching the screen thought quietly, if humans had known in advance that Daigo was Tiga, or that Gatanathor would lose, would the future have unfolded as they expected? Would that knowledge have preserved the purity of humanity's hope? Perhaps it would have robbed the ending of its beauty and its shock. The human heart is unpredictable. For now, then, let Daigo's secret remain. Happy Children's Day. 112. Daigo, do what you believe is right. Luke was still talking to Daigo. Gijera is a plant, after all. When the sun sets, its activity weakens, and when the sun rises, it recovers. He sounded like he was suggesting a possibility. Could Daigo find the courage to go all out? If that's the case, Why don't humans band together and uproot Gijera at night? Daigo voiced his thought. Heh! A sneer tugged at the corner of Luke's mouth. Watching the exchange, Tregear remembered the past. Back in ancient times, there were others who tried the same, but Ultraman Tiga. He stared at Daigo, equal parts mockery and something like sorrow in his eyes, and said, human desire runs deeper than Gijera's roots. Then he left with Dina. Daigo's eyes flickered. He realized they knew who he was. He thought, he knows I'm Ultraman Tiga. But what lingered more strongly was Tregear's throwaway line. Human desires are deeper than Gijera's roots. It sounded offhand, but it expressed the fear gnawing at Daigo. What was he to do now, with no support from his TPC teammates? Around him was only loneliness, in the Gaia space-time. Human desire? Fujimiya watched the helpless Daigo and felt his own emotions stir. He had once resented humanity, now he had chosen to stand with Gamu. But the end that played in the video wasn't decided by Tiga or Daigo. There were only two possible outcomes. Humans choose death, or they choose to move forward and survive. The kind of future that would come depended on human will. Caught in the middle, Daigo was destined to be a lonely hero. Outside, the sun was setting. With the daylight gone, Gijera's influence weakened. Countless people returned from the dream world to reality all at once. The contrast and the pain were unbearable. They surged toward the giant Gijera flower. Gijera! Gijera! Give me pollen! Gijera! Crowds pressed around, begging the plant to give them pollen so they could dive back into the illusion of happiness. Withdrawal writhed across the city. Some swayed and collapsed like puddles of mud. Others danced and cheered with manic joy. Everyone chanted Gijera's name. In the Zeta space-time, what a flower! It's practically a tree. Juggler studied Gijera and the humans it had ensnared. Old scars opened in his mind, fists clenching and only slowly unclenching. Humans are always like this, he sneered. Then another thought softened his attitude. Believe in your choice, Daigo. Believe in your choice, even if you stand alone, so you won't regret it. Humans weren't that weak. Gijera underestimated them. Juggler smiled unusually brightly. Shame Ultraman Tiga doesn't use a sword. I wouldn't mind seeing him cut that rotten thing in half. Back in the TPC command room, panic and resolve fought one another. If it blooms, humanity will never stand again, someone cried. We need to call on everyone tonight and destroy Gijera, Daigo said firmly around the conference table, but his determination wasn't contagious. Faces around him were sapped. I want to. Really, I do. I know Gijera is wrong, but Shinjo's protest trailed off. Munakata spoke next, uneasy. Once you get a taste of Gijera's pollen, it's not easy to quit, he admitted. It's humiliating, but I want to breathe it again. Munakata didn't even seem to know what embarrassment was. Rina, who had been the first to inhale the pollen, was hit the worst. Maybe. Gijera is a gift from Earth to us, she said. We don't need this, Daigo snapped, anger rising. He scanned every face and said, quiet and sincere, I want everyone to tell the Earth, we are in pain, but even with this pain we must build dreams more beautiful than Gijera. But what if humanity? Captain Iruma struggled to voice the other possibility. What if they choose Gijera? Hori added. Daigo, if humanity is about to perish, can you save everyone? If they're going to die, they won't want to suffer. They'll choose Jera. Daigo stood up, incredulous. When did everyone become so timid? Are humans really that weak? Even Director Sawai, who had been dozing, spoke up. Gijera's pollen makes most people experience a world happier than reality. If we attack it, we make ourselves enemies of the whole world. Daigo sank back into his chair, the truth settling in. Those affected by the pollen couldn't be relied on. No matter how much the lucid few debated, around them were delirious patients. He understood now that the only people he could count on might be himself. The scene cut. Daigo walked the streets alone, confusion filling him. Would humanity truly fade away into Gijera's illusions, as Luke had said, just like 30 million years ago? Could the human race not overcome its fate? Give it here. This is mine. People fought over the flowers while others lay motionless, hollow-eyed. The ugly depths of human desire were bare before him. He could not bear to watch and slipped to the riverside, unsure what to do. What should I believe now? His memory drifted back to his conversation with the ancients. Since you have so many giants, can't they protect people? Those Ultramen won't interfere with human choice. They are all light, but you're different, Daigo. You're both light and human. Yes, he thought, I am different. If, as an Ultra Warrior, he could not interfere with human choice, then as Daigo Madoka the human he could. He would stop this impending doom. The answer and resolve settled in him. Outside the video, he found the same answer. Daigo watched the scene of his future self making a decision, then shook his head. He had his answer now. In that moment, inside and outside the screen, present and future merged as Daigo told himself aloud, Daigo, do what you think is right. Under the awed eyes of countless viewers, he pulled the Guts spark lens from his embrace, gripped it tight, and raised it high. A warrior is always lonely because a warrior must sometimes go against the world to do what is right. A brilliant light tore through the night. The solitary giant of light stood firm. He planted himself in front of Gijera, and at the same time, he stood before all humanity. After that, there were no torches. The giant of light descended from the sky. As always, he stood bravely before disaster. From a human perspective, he looked more godlike than ever. The only difference was what met him now was not joy and cheers. Instead, voices rose in panic and pleading. Tiga, it's Tiga. No, Tiga, don't! Don't destroy Gijera. That's our Gijera. Those desperate calls pierced Daigo's ears and swirled in his head. The people nearby, still lost in that beautiful, illusory dream, saw Tiga appear and feared he would destroy Gijera. They cried out to stop him. Their stubborn pleas made Daigo's chest ache, but as the anger inside him flared, that pain hardened into something firmer. The false happiness Gijera offered was a twisted agony. No matter how sweet it seemed, once the sugar coating was gone, only a cruel bitterness remained. Daigo could no longer afford to think. There was no room for fear. Even if he alone understood the cost, he walked resolutely toward Gijera. When you are betrayed, can you still be so resolute, warrior of light and hope? Having lost humanity's trust, can your power remain what you imagine? Tregear tilted his head slightly, savoring the thought, imagining Taro's feeling in that moment. Senior Tiga, why not just use a beam? Gijera at night should be weak. Zeta watched, puzzled. As the light of hope, Seven said, he becomes vulnerable when he stands against humanity. Gijera didn't give humans a real choice, Seven continued. It magnified their desires, made them unquestioning. Tiga may be waiting, trying to give humanity a choice. With his strength, he could finish Gijera in an instant, Zero added, unusually thoughtful. But if you burn Gijera outright, you might destroy its body while leaving the roots, the seeds inside people's hearts, untouched. Tiga walked slowly up to Gijera. He raised his right hand and delivered a single, clean chopping strike to the giant, unbloomed flower bud. Bang! The dull impact rang under the night sky, sparks flaring from the contact, but to his surprise, the bud was unscathed. He pulled back, then braced for a stronger blow, muscles tensing for a decisive strike. The ground shuddered. A massive tentacle burst from the earth and whipped toward his face. Tiga barely dodged and sprang back to create distance. Though Gijera was weakened at night, it was not inert. Thick vine-like tentacles kept thrusting up from the ground, lashing at him. Tiga regrouped and charged again, aiming for the bud. If he could destroy it before it bloomed, perhaps everything could be saved. No matter how he pulled and struck, the bud would not split. Vines and tendrils whipped and constricted, and the constant pain forced Tiga to change tactics. He began to cut at the attacking tentacles. Hand chops, kicks, knee strikes, elbows. He hammered Gijera's appendages, but they took no meaningful damage. Slowly, he was pushed onto the defensive. Not far away, standing before a landed ship, Luke watched with his daughter, both silent. They didn't leave. Perhaps Luke still clung to a sliver of hope. When he had asked Daigo that question earlier, he had expected something from this warrior. An Ultraman who interferes with human choices. Tiga, you're the first, he had thought. Amid Tiga's relentless assault, Gijera's main body felt a threat it had never known. It didn't understand why the giant kept fighting. It could no longer remain arrogant. With a shriek, the closed bud began to open, even in the night, revealing a bird beak-shaped pistol that snarled at Tiga, bearing sharp teeth beneath its pretty facade, its true predatory form, like the reality beneath humanity's illusions. Vines suddenly coiled tight around Tiga's neck. The beak darted and pecked at his chest. He blocked with his arm. Missing its mark, the beak retracted, and then countless thick yellow pollen clouds burst out, enveloping Tiga's face. The hallucinogenic dust blurred his vision and sent dizziness through his head. He lost the temporary ability to act, was locked fast by Gajera's roots, and hung upside down. Yellow lightning crackled through the roots, burning him, and Tiga groaned in pain. He hung there like a man on a cross, while all humanity sunk into illusion. He, alone awake, bore their sins. Are you still waiting? Ace clenched his fists, watching. At a moment like this, would he still trust humanity's hope? If it were him, he thought, perhaps he would make the same choice as before, eliminate Gijera and then leave Earth. Maybe he'd let go because he couldn't bear the cost. But seeing Tiga suspended and tormented, Ace had a different premonition. Inside the delayed Gutswing 2, the team watched helplessly. They weren't sure whether this sortie was to support Tiga or to protect Gijera. Still, seeing the former Giant of Light in such agony, Hori couldn't help but say, Tiga looks like he's in terrible pain. Shinjo ground his teeth, conflicted. Outside the monitor, his hands were fists. Guilt and fear twisted through the crew. They feared destruction, and they feared that if the crowd turned, they themselves might stand against Daigo. I believe in you all. Daigo's voice cut through, and the Guts members looked up. I believe that, whatever happens, you will stand by my side. He stared at Tiga on the screen. The vines threw him up and down, slamming his head against the earth over and over, but they could not dim the light in his eyes. Come on, the crowd cried. Their cries, though, were for Gijera, cheers for the monster that tormented the Ultra Warrior. Watching from other worlds, people finally understood how weighty Daigo's resolve had been when he chose to stand against Gijera and, by extension, against the will of humanity. The path he had chosen was cruel, lined with thorns that bound him. Yet among those thorns, some still reached out to him. A boy in the crowd watched his former hero being tormented and felt unbearable pain. He tugged on his father's sleeve. Dad, burn Gijera! Tiga looks so pitiful. The father's smile faltered. He hesitated, looking down at the small replica of Gijera in his hand with confusion. Back on Gutswing 2, seeing Tiga hanging and crackling with electricity, Shinjo finally made a choice. When reason could not decide, he let his heart choose. The confusion in his eyes cleared and he said, relieved, All right, let me take some of the pain too. He exchanged glances with Hori and Rena and then shouted firmly, Burn Gijera! Everyone, let's step into a new era together. Rena breathed a relieved smile. You're right. This is what we fight for. Then support Tiga, Munakata ordered. Understood, came the reply. Gutswing 2 roared into the night, heading for Gijera. The scene electrified countless viewers. The team had chosen to stand with Daigo, with Tiga. Zeta lifted a hand and asked, voice edged with curiosity, Wait, Daigo's identity hasn't been revealed, right? Didn't anyone notice someone missing from the plane? P.S. Actually, Munakata doesn't drink at all. Actually, Munakata never wanted to be a commander. He just wants to be a big, muscular older brother. Actually, Munakata doesn't even know what Gijera is. Actually, Munakata is a very true man. A ray of dawn broke the silence of the night. Come on! Hori's shout cut through the quiet. The long muted background music swelled. Gutswing 2, the Swallow, changed course and flew between Gijera and Tiga. Whoosh! Its lightning-shaped cannon fired, shredding the vines wrapped around Tiga's ankles. Freed, Tiga flipped twice and landed, returning to his stance. Gijera reared back and lashed its vines again, but Tiga blocked them without hesitation. He thrust his arms forward, crossed them, and then opened them wide. Purple light erupted from his color timer like a rift splitting the void, drawing in photon energy. Cha-ah! He brought his arms together into an L shape and unleashed an unbearably bright, ultra-high-temperature beam from his right arm straight into Gijera's exposed stamen. Gijera screamed as golden sparks raced across its body. Its jagged beak spasmed, spewing yellow, hallucinogenic pollen as its flesh burned away. Boom, boom, the monster's form disintegrated in feathery shards and sparks. Its agonized shriek faded as it fell into the flames and crumbled. Ding-dong, ding-dong, Tiga's color timer flashed red. Usually that meant danger, but tonight the red was a marker of victory. He dropped to a knee, panting. Is it over? Daigo wondered. Suddenly, whoosh! At the entrance of the hole Gijera had come from, a root twitched and began to pull back into the darkness, as if trying to escape, heal, and return later. Tiga, pull out its root, Munakata called from Gutswing 2. Tiga's lowered head snapped up. He lunged and seized the root before it could vanish. Trying to run away, he clenched it with both hands and roared. Heat surged through him, his whole body superheated as electric currents of light and heat ran through him from the inside out. High heat blast, current transmission. The current spread instantly through the root and into Gijera's body. Its main root convulsed, purple-red light flickered along its shell, and the whole thing swelled. With a final, terrifying roar, Gijera vanished in a blaze. The monster's hold on humanity, the false comfort it had offered as an eternal dream, burned away too. Flames shot up from the hole like brilliant fireworks, lighting the night. "Well done," Juggler said quietly to himself. "Great teamwork." Tiga moved in the instant Munakata called. Actually, Munakata didn't even, another voice began. "This move's basically, I'm coming through the internet to beat you up," someone else joked. "Cutting the roots, that's a great technique." It's a bit like Mebius's flames, but not the same. Tiga's not going to be some magic king like Ace, is he? Countless viewers cheered. On the screen, the distant crystal ship dissolved. Luke and his daughter Dina, Gijera's emissaries, drifted into translucent motes of light and then vanished. The heavy night gave way to dawn. The earth woke. A morning ray broke the silence. The sun shone on them all. "Thank you, Tiga. Thank you." Tiga turned at the familiar voices. Luke and Dina had become apparitions among the clouds, their faces relaxed, finally free. Tiga realized that with Gijera's destruction, its emissaries, who had depended on the monster's essence for continued existence, could not remain. Daigo's voice reached them. "I'm sorry, I didn't want to hurt you." There was no anger in Luke's eyes. His smile held something purer, relief and hope. "It's all right, Tiga," he said. "Thanks to you, we learned what real life is." "Real life?" Tiga asked, if a giant warrior could ask. "To live short lives to the full and leave our work for the next generation to carry on. That's how humanity grows, slowly and surely." Luke's wariness fell away, and for the first time, he looked genuinely moved. That's truly remarkable. He had understood at last. Humanity never needed the sweet poison of Gijera's dream. No matter how pleasant at first, a sugar-coated toxin remained a toxin. Back in the TPC command room, Daigo and the others sat around a table. Shinjo spun his chair and stretched. "Ah, there we go. I feel awake again. Now that's over. I can't believe I fell for Jera's pollen." "How can you say that?" Hori scolded, delivering an exaggerated ultra slap. "You were the first to inhale the stuff." "Huh?" Shinjo covered his head, bewildered. Was he really the first? Rina across from him lowered her head and hid a smile behind her hand. Captain Aruma watched the two, amused, and sighed. "I truly admire Tiga," she said. "He knew how the world would judge him, and still risked everything to save us." "No," Daigo corrected with a smile. "In the end, humanity made the choice for itself." He said the words with a hint of something, mischief or sorrow, and the screen lingered on the withered remains of Gijera. Viewers were moved and a little perplexed by what they had seen. Munakata didn't know what to say, so he just stayed silent to look like an expert, one joked. "Heh, Mr. Daigo, Mr. Tiga, so handsome, so warm." "Whoa, Otherworld Tiga fans." Wait, did they not notice? Didn't Daigo's words give him away? Maybe the pollen's still a little fuzzy in their heads. They didn't see clearly. Question. Daigo wasn't in Gutswing 2 or the command room. When he disappeared, Tiga appeared. So what is Daigo's identity? Of course he's a passing masked hero. So that's it, Mr. Daigo. Your answer? In the Triga universe, Kengo watched the paused screen with a thoughtful expression. He was a warrior of light, the light of hope, yet he wondered how he would fare if faced with the same choice. He would not run, he would fight Gijera. But could he win humanity's trust the way Daigo had? Beyond his TPU comrades, his bond with humanity felt thin. Compared to other giants of light, he hadn't done enough. He sighed. He wanted to speak with Daigo about these doubts, but how could the two of them, separated by time and space, ever meet? Outside the broadcast, in the command room, Captain Aruma's face reddened as she remembered how foolishly she had behaved. She was a mother, and only 4 years from 40. How had she acted so childishly? She turned to Hori. Immediately, start researching isolation devices against Jera. No, against all kinds of hallucinogenic substances, she ordered. Yes, ma'am. In the Kingdom universe, Triggear watched the footage in silence. White Belial chuckled at his side. What's the matter? Did the result not match your expectations? Before he finished, Tregear interrupted. The old man knew the pattern. The videos usually ended with the Ultra Warrior's triumph. That didn't make his observation wrong. Life is beautiful because it's messy, he murmured. When something displeasing appears, especially if it stirs human desire, people react with hostility without missing a beat. But not every human or giant of light in every timeline gets such luck or chooses to trust. I haven't seen every world, but I can imagine it. At that moment, the screen changed. The withered flower dissolved and new footage took over, capturing everyone's attention. 3 images alternated. In the first, Tiga battled a towering demon-like adversary. In the second, a still more grotesque, more powerful demon fought him. And in the third, which made countless viewers gasp, a winged demon towered over the field while 2 giants of light, Tiga and Triga, stood opposite it, their appearances echoing one another. They were related. Even more startling was the Kyrialoid's reaction. When Tiga appeared, the beast flinched and fell back half a step. He looked formidable, but his movements hid a trace of cowardice. Many viewers wondered at that contradiction. On a distant planet, a village of Kyrialoids watched the broadcast and read the subtitles. That voice sounds familiar, one said. Wait, isn't that one of our own? He's shouting, but there's a hint of fear in it. I know that third one, Kyrialoid Wong Gang from our village. When did he go fight Tiga? And who's that round-eyed kid? Fight? He just left, saying something like, pour the wine, I'll be right back. Just to clarify, the section where I wrote about Kengo's thoughts is not meant to disparage him, but to offer a humanistic comparison from the TV audience's perspective. In this respect, Tiga's compassion is indeed one of the highest in the Ultraman universe. This passage also foreshadows Triga's new storyline later on. This is a Kyrialoid. Ultraman Tiga is still chasing me, damn it! Daigo shot upright in his seat. The psychological scars those words brought up were worse than he cared to admit. Frankly, these troublemakers were one of the few things that could make the usually gentle Daigo feel queasy just by being mentioned. Ultraman Tiga is still chasing me? What does that mean? Shinjo scratched his head. That tone sounds pretty angry, doesn't it? Hori leaned closer to the 3 pictures on the display and frowned. Wait, Daigo, didn't you only fight the Kyrialoid twice? Why are there 3 pictures? This one is the Triga who showed up with Zeta before? Captain Iruma squinted at the image, trying to reconcile the face he saw. It did bear a resemblance to Ultraman Tiga, but he couldn't place it. I don't know, Daigo admitted. He only remembered 2 clashes with the Kyrialoid. How could there be a third, one where he was teaming with a warrior from another spacetime? The handful of them exchanged glances and then, almost in unison, said, the future. Triga spacetime. Ultraman Tiga Senpai and me, and the Kyrialoid again. Kengo looked bewildered at the scene before him. Then, without warning, his consciousness wavered. The world shifted. On an ancient, shattered battlefield of flame and ruin, Kengo found his body transformed into Dark Trigger. Beside him stood Carmiara. He shook his head, trying to clear the image, and drifted toward the command room with a stunned, uncertain feeling. On Earth, in the Triga universe, strange phenomena kept occurring. Captain Tatsumi, barely able to hide his smile, announced news to his team. He had been promoted to Commander-in-Chief of the Elite Victory Team's Asian branch. Kengo and the others congratulated him, then slipped away to Akito's lab to plot a surprise party. Let's celebrate for the captain, secretly, someone whispered. Won't he be mad? Another worried. No, he won't. Let's do it, the others insisted. Okay, we'll call it Smile Operation Number 1. Even Akito, usually cool and tsundere, was laughing with Kengo and happily scheming about a surprise for the captain. Everyone seemed oddly cheerful, everyone except Kengo and Yuna. The rest had an almost blank enthusiasm, as if they'd forgotten how they used to be. The same bizarre cheerfulness was cropping up worldwide. In the deep sea, Carmiara laughed aloud at the water itself. That's Triga's dark energy fluctuation. He'll return to Kengo's body soon. The true Triga is coming back. She didn't even notice she'd said Kengo out loud. She was drunk on the idea of Triga returning to her side. Humph, Hudra scoffed beside her. Carmiara has finally lost it. Whack! Digon grabbed his shoulder and met his eyes. Right, Hudra, it's better for you to lead us in achieving our clan's long-cherished dream. Only you can do it. Brother Gongzi patted Hudra's shoulder and looked at him with unwavering trust. Hudra blinked, surprised but pleased. Yes, only I can do it, he chuckled. He didn't notice, of course, that Dagon wasn't actually at the seabed. The water in front of him rippled, empty. In the city, Dagon crouched behind a wall and watched Kengo and Yuna as they walked by. Really, he watched Yuna. Why did I get slapped back then? He muttered, replaying that memory. Then he looked up and froze. Yuna, dressed in white and looking graceful, stood before him as if by magic. Her clear eyes found his. She held a white flower and looked shy. Not yet. She blushed slightly and offered him the flower. But one day we'll be together. Dagon took the flower in a daze, both astonished and delighted, watching Yuna's coy retreat. Somewhere in the crowd, a man who resembled a certain UP food host watched everything silently. Black, chiraloid-like patterns flickered across his face, and then he melted back into the throng. Back at headquarters and in other worlds, people watched the feed with growing concern. The video began to play. On the screen, Ultraman Tiga carefully crouched and cradled the unconscious Captain Iruma in his arms. Ultraman Tiga, I've been waiting for you, a man's voice called out suddenly. Tiga stood and looked toward a figure standing in the middle of the road. The man smiled with terrible confidence. Are you planning to be this Earth's protector? Isn't that laughable? Who is that? Hori asked, puzzled. The stranger spoke as if to himself. Before your giant form appeared, the people of this Earth were already waiting for the great Kyriloid to lead them. Then, pointing at Ultraman Tiga, he sneered. Your existence is unnecessary. I will show you the power of us Kyriloids and make you feel our wrath. He raised his hand, and a pillar of fire lanced into the sky. From it, a devilish giant emerged, Kyriloid Ein. Under the night sky, the two giants clashed immediately. To everyone's surprise, Ultraman Tiga found himself at a disadvantage. Kyriloid kept up a torrent of attacks, knocking Tiga through buildings and sending him crashing to the ground, looking battered. Kyriloid pinned Tiga by the chin, driving the crowd to the edge of their seats. Then Tiga countered. Like Leo in his fight against Ultraman Mebius, Tiga used a grapple and threw Kyriloid away. Pale blue handbeams sprayed out and forced Kyriloid to retreat for the moment. Tiga clasped his hands and his body shifted. He had switched to Sky type. His color changed. Hori called in surprise. In Sky type, Tiga was faster and far more agile. He launched a furious flurry of attacks, and for a while he seemed to turn the tide. Several heavy kicks sent Kyriloid reeling, but Kyriloid kept bearing the pain, waiting for an opening. When he pulled back, he suddenly raised his hand and unleashed a hell flame bomb. Boom! A tornado of blazing flames struck Tiga's chest. The fire slammed into him, and to everyone's shock, Tiga's advantage evaporated. The Sky type had given him incredible speed, but it also amplified the sensation of pain and made injury hit him harder than it would in another form. Moves the multi-type could shrug off now left the Sky type staggering. Tiga was in trouble. On the Land of Light, Zeta watched the battle with concern. Why did Tiga-senpai suddenly fall behind? He asked. Zero, standing nearby, sneered faintly. You don't get it at all, do you? Get what? Zeta blinked. Zero folded his arms and began to explain, like a teacher to an apprentice. Changing form isn't always a straight upgrade. When an Ultra switches to Sky type, speed and perception increase dramatically, but so does the sensitivity to pain and the severity of wounds. That's the trade-off. The younger Ultras nodded at the explanation, but one straightforward soul couldn't help speaking up. Then why didn't he just start in red form? Zeta asked, puzzled. It still has to be the brute form, Daigo muttered. It still has to be the brute form, he repeated, half to himself. Hori, why don't we modify the guts wing? Put 2 big speakers on it. Shinjo blurted in the TPC command room, staring at the battle on the screen. He suddenly felt a tickle in his head, as if a brain were about to sprout. Speakers? Why? Hori asked, baffled. Every time that music starts, a new storm has appeared. Ultraman Tiga gets the upper hand. He pointed at the Sky-type Tiga on the monitor, now clearly at a disadvantage. The moment the music stops, he falls behind. Daigo nodded slowly. Everyone else praised Shinjo's crazy idea, and then, with no small amount of good humor, told him to lay off the fake liquor. They joked that installing speakers on the guts wing would only work until the plane inevitably crashed. On the screen, the fight continued. The Kyriloid gripped Ultraman Tiga by the throat and hurled him away. Tiga crashed into a skyscraper, reducing it to rubble. As he staggered to his feet, he realized the Kyriloid had already finished charging its skill. The Hellfire bomb detonated where Tiga had been standing. Flames roared into the night, earth and stone flew. Tiga barely managed to cover his face and roll into a defensive stance, but his color timer began flashing red, his warning that energy was draining. He looked down at the blinking light with a pang of despair. Ah, damn it, he thought. Daigo, watching both on and off the screen, felt it at the same time. The Sky-type's increased perception also meant pain was amplified. Every encounter risked leaving him worse off before he could finish the enemy. And who had turned the music off anyway? How was anyone supposed to play Sky-type like this? Maybe the red, Berserker type would be easier to use. On screen, the Kyriloid showed no sign of noticing the tide shifting. It barreled forward, delivering iron-fisted blows and a crushing, manacle-like choke to Tiga. "I'll pull off your mask," it seemed to sneer. After several rapid exchanges, the Kyriloid realized the slender, violet-skinned beauty was basically a glass cannon, devastating but fragile. If he kept grappling and never let Tiga use his speed, victory would be easy. "Chibi Kyriloid Jangwei, you've done it," he thought, picturing the ultra medals and praise from the Kyriloid god. He tossed Tiga again and slammed him into the ground. Rina couldn't help shouting, "Ultraman Tiga, you absolutely cannot give up." Captain Aruma, despite her discomfort, pushed to her feet and called out hoarsely, "Ultraman Tiga, I always believed you could protect Earth and humanity. Please, get up." Whether it was the captain's words or Daigo finally figuring out the opponent's pattern, he realized this form played best as a ranged mage. He flicked through his move list and casually drew a skill. As the Kyriloid charged another Hellfire bomb, Tiga rolled aside and created distance. Bringing his hands together over his color timer, a white flash burst out as he swung his right hand and unleashed a blue beam in midair, Freeze Beam. Instead of striking the Kyriloid, the beam detonated above it. Frosty white mist fell from the sky, and the cold wrapped around the Kyriloid like a vice. He flailed uselessly as crystalline ice climbed over him. In moments, he stood frozen, an ornate sculpture of ice. "Holy crap, ice!" the Guts crew shouted. "Ultraman's freeze, used so well." "Kyriloids are afraid of freezing too? I thought it was just us." Stop, don't remind me of the pain. "Master, teach me that move. You're too loud." In the space garrison, the Ultra Warriors gained a fresh appreciation for Tiga. They could see the Tiga in the footage was probably still new to his power, green and inexperienced, but his tactics and timing were surprisingly methodical. Zeta's eyes lit up at the freeze beam. Not only the skill, he started dreaming about Tiga himself. He'd heard tales of a senior called the Debt King who'd once bonded with Tiga. Could there be enhanced forms that used Tiga's power and techniques? Could one even summon them directly? Zeta kept grinning and pestering Zero about the possibilities. Ah Guang, standing nearby, nodded slightly. And speaking of ultrametals, it seemed Tiga appeared along with two others. The three heroes, right? Agal? Back on the screen, the frozen Kyriloid could do nothing as Tiga crossed his arms and brushed the crystal on his forehead. A white flash transformed him back into multi-type. He made a sword-like slashing motion, gathering his signature finishing beam, the Zeppelian Ray. A brilliant white column pierced the night and struck the ice statue. Purple arcs danced across the surface as a surge of Light of Hope energy flooded the Kyriloid's body. Slowed and unable to move by the ice, he could only watch. To the Kyriloid, the onslaught felt like an eternity. Frost shattered. His body broke apart like glass, then disintegrated into scattered shards. The Guts members erupted in cheers as Ultraman Tiga soared into the sky and flew toward the stars. Hori squinted at the display and then frowned. "That's strange. Where's Daigo?" Everyone blinked and searched the room. On the screen, a young man was waving broadly and exchanging a smile with Captain Aruma. "Captain, don't shoot! It's me!" The image froze on Captain Aruma's astonishingly gentle smile. "Oh," someone said, "that timing is too coincidental. We never noticed before." The Guts team exchanged looks, uneasy now. Daigo's appearances and disappearances during battles had always been oddly timed. Other defense teams from alternate timelines had the same memory. Someone always vanished during the fight. The second battle with the Kyrialoid, the one Daigo had just rewatched, had nearly cost him his life. He knew what it felt like to see the light dim, consciousness sinking into darkness. That helplessness was why he hadn't laughed when he'd seen X afraid of the dark. He'd only felt empathy. The memory still sent chills through him. But Daigo's smile when he watched the video was a relieved one. On this planet, there were humans who believed in him. Their inner light was no weaker than any Ultras. He and Ultraman Tiga, who carried those hopes, would not fail them. Perhaps that was why the video called them the Light of Hope. Daigo's drawback, of course, was that he'd never had an Ultra mentor. He wasn't an original Ultra, didn't possess combat memories, and hadn't fully mastered the move list or the quirks of the buoyant sky type. 117, Leg Demon Zeta Spacetime. Captain, what's with these Kyrialoids? They seem a bit off, don't they? Yuka leaned toward Juggler and peered at the screen. Curiosity bright in her voice. Juggler felt a familiar headache at her question. This girl was always like this, yet something about her face reminded him of someone he once knew. Her eager demeanor, the way she connected with monsters, the same enthusiastic smile. He had a soft spot for Yuka that no one in this world could explain. Still, his expression hardened into a scowl as he gave his opinion of the Kyrialoids. They're nothing but cowardly psychopaths, the kind everyone detests, like roaches hiding inside a planet's creatures. Despicable invaders. Oh, and I don't recommend cutting them open, he added with a grimace. They'll spray you with an unbelievably foul-smelling gas. Ooh, that's gross. Yuka pushed Juggler's shoulder and immediately dropped the idea of dissection. Compared to those aliens, she preferred studying monsters. These things always like to call themselves angels or gods, Juggler said, amusement and a hint of memory in his tone. But in worlds where Ultra Warriors exist, angels and gods usually mean trouble. The broadcast began. In the city, news outlets were abuzz with rumors of an angel. Interviewed citizens spoke with absolute certainty, as if the angel were indeed real. The anomaly drew Guts' attention, and everyone crowded around the screens. Captain Iruma's brow tightened when the camera focused on an elderly woman on the street. The woman looked up and beamed. I saw it. That angel glowed all over. I believe it's been protecting us all along. Captain Iruma felt a prickle of unease. She turned and walked toward her quarters. The team noticed, and Daigo asked, frowning, Captain, who is that on TV? You don't need to know, she said, troubled. She kept the details to herself and went into the room, picking up a photo of a boy on the table. A voice message arrived. She opened it. Save Grandma, please. Please save Grandma. Tomoki? Her son's voice made her eyes widen. She realized she had to go home. That house, that family, tugged at her in ways she couldn't lay out for anyone. The camera cut back to the city. Pale, ribbon-like streaks gathered in the sky, slowly outlining a human-shaped figure. On the ground, citizens clustered below, holding angel dolls, wearing wings, praying with an almost reverent fervor. Whatever was forming above looked exactly like the angel the old woman had described. The strange phenomenon drew TPC's attention, but with Captain Iruma absent, many response plans were hard to put in motion. Munakata decided to send Shinjo, who was nearby, to investigate. Inside Gutswing 1, Shinjo reported in a calm voice. This is Shinjo. I'm above the city. Something's not right. It can't be picked up from the air, but he began, then clutched his head. Pain flared across his skull. I've got a terrible headache, he said, stumbling. Munakata ordered him back to base. Return immediately. Shinjo apologized over the comm and piloted the craft home. On the other side of town, Captain Iruma had rushed home and now stood face-to-face with her mother-in-law, Megumi. There was something odd about Megumi's expression. Long time no see, Megumi, Iruma said, guilty about her absences because of the job. I understand. You're the captain of Guts. Very busy, Megumi replied with a serene smile. But you'll be able to relax soon. Relax? What do you mean? Someone will come to take us back. They'll descend to the ground soon. Do you believe that? Iruma linked Megumi's words to the TV broadcast. Are you talking about the angel? Perhaps. Hitoshi may come back with them, Megumi said. Hitoshi, Iruma's late husband, had died in the Guts wing tests. Iruma, as Guts' captain, knew that resurrecting the dead in this world was unnatural, whether it ended well or not. Hitoshi is dead. He won't come back. You'll understand when you see the angel, Megumi said, her voice oddly distant. Her cryptic remark, played against the eerie broadcast music, gave viewers chills across the city. Online, comments spiraled. Dissent. If they weren't carrioloids, I'd think it's the three-body problem. Destroy the magma tyranny. The universe belongs to Baltan. The dead won't return unless they merge with an ultra warrior, or a necromancer resurrects them. Later, Captain Aruma climbed the stairs to her son's room. To get through TPC's security and come here, that's something else. She wasn't angry so much as relieved and admonishing at once. Tomoki looked up. Grandma. He stopped when he saw his grandmother standing at the doorway, watching him in a way that made him uneasy. He turned his face away. I'll take very good care of Tomoki, Megumi said with a strange light laugh. Tomoki didn't answer, his eyes saying plainly, You can forget about that. Iruma left the house, worry pressing at her. Outside, Daigo and Reina appeared, both smiling idiotically, as they often did. Tomoki slipped out and warned them that more people had been acting strangely lately. After they left, Iruma and Reina walked ahead, talking about matters that were private between them. Daigo kept a respectful distance, showing a social awareness most humans lacked. Suddenly, Daigo felt something, a presence. A delicate voice whispered down a corridor of rustling leaves. Tiga. Turning instinctively toward the sound, Daigo caught sight of a cloaked figure slipping between the trees. The woman moved silently. Her chunky-heeled short boots clicked, the hem of her cloak swaying like a curtain. Slivers of light cut through the fabric, throwing bands of shadow across her long, pale legs. Nice legs! Someone somewhere, an amused director named Sakamoto in another space-time, suddenly thought. And the idea would go on to influence many tokusatsu series in that alternate world. But Daigo wasn't thinking about costume design. When he turned, the woman vanished. He ran into the woods, senses sharpened. She was suddenly above him, standing on a streetlight. Before he could react, she lifted her cloak and fired a flash of psychic energy from her right hand. The invisible wave slammed into him. Ah! Daigo cried as the force knocked him back, and he slammed into a tree trunk. More citizens gathered in the square, clutching their angel effigies, certain the descent was imminent. At Gut's command, the screen monitoring the area streaked with electromagnetic noise and went to static. Shinjo, back at base, doubled over. The headache intensified. Everything felt wrong. Above the crowd, the feathered figure in the sky continued to solidify. It's an angel, people shouted in awe. Captain Aruma watched, torn. Was this a human, a monster, an alien, or an actual angel? She couldn't decide, only that whatever it was, its methods were insidious. Its influence looked almost like brainwashing. Rina's attention flicked aside to notice someone missing. Where's Daigo? She asked into her communicator. Daigo, meanwhile, was fighting for his life in a dim alley. Woog! The psychic waves hammered him again and again, pinning him against the wall. He had assumed that with his enhanced human host body, he'd be fine. The woman, however, didn't play fair. He was fighting not one adversary, but several. Kyriloid figures hovered behind the cloaked woman, matching her strikes. Humans are pitiful creatures, stupid and fragile, the woman mocked. Daigo reached for his pistol, but the psychic pressure kept coming, relentless and disorienting. He staggered and fell to the ground. The woman approached slowly, savoring the moment. Daigo drew his gun and took aim. She ignored the muzzle and pressed her body against his, pinning him in the corner. Her face hovered inches from his, her voice a silky taunt. What's the use of shooting? I'm dead already. Her red lips curved into a smile as she breathed on him, both playful and provocative. The notion of a talking corpse made the hair on his neck rise. We humans aren't as fragile as you think, Daigo snarled, clenching his teeth. A fresh psychic blast sent him crashing down again. The woman's smile widened. Oh, you think you can fight the mighty Kyriloid god in your human form? She said. You're far too arrogant. She stepped back, her cloak falling open for a beat. Daigo could see her fair, slender legs, the way her chunky-heeled boots looked down at him. She moved with predatory grace. This is the downside of transforming with a transformation device, a commentator's voice said from the broadcast. Not enough time. I recommend all human hosts train up for close combat with Ultraman Orb. Jack's method is the best. Raise your hand and transform. No resistance from the human host. She's beaten Daigo to a pulp. Maybe she wants him to go back with her for hard labor? Thousands of viewers watched, terrified and transfixed. As a human host, strengthened by the light of hope, Daigo's combat skill exceeded ordinary humans, but it wasn't on par with an Ultraman who had wrestled aliens in wormholes. The rest of Guts watched helplessly, anxiety gripping them. Especially Rina. She suddenly understood how Daigo had gotten so many injuries before the battle at the Gate of Hell. She imagined what he might endure if he couldn't transform into Tiga. The cloaked woman's aura of superiority grew. With a slow, deliberate movement, she lifted her cloak and extended one booted foot. The chunky heel pressed down on Daigo's left chest. A collective gasp erupted from viewers worldwide. Rina screamed into her comm, "Daigo, transform, now!" Daigo couldn't. He hadn't had the chance. He was pinned, breath knocked from his lungs, his body battered, and in that white-hot instant of pain and helplessness, everything else fell away. P.S. Some readers asked, so here's a note. In this book, I focus on Daigo when it comes to the Tiga-related parts. The two plot lines so far, Gijera and the Caryoloids, tie into Daigo's struggle with divinity and humanity and the theme of the light of hope. I only plan to reference the TV series, the novels, the Final Odyssey, and a few miscellaneous settings. I won't dig into older ancient scumbag plots since they tend to spark fan conflicts and flame wars and are hard to balance. As for overused memes like the horn-breaking maniac, I won't dedicate chapters to them because they can't be made fresh anymore, and readers are probably tired of them. Also, in case you missed it earlier, Daigo's true identity is unknown to most people in the Diga-Dyna spacetime, similar to how Neri's identity was initially obscured. Hope you understand. That's all. 118. The gates of hell are about to open. Creak, creak. The woman's short boots pressed down on Daigo's chest like a dull knife. "Hurry and transform into Ultraman," she taunted, utterly unafraid. She kept using words and degrading gestures to bait him, trying to provoke him into losing control. Daigo didn't know the plot behind her words, but he wasn't weak or impulsive. "Humans are not fragile," he said through gritted teeth, the light in his eyes still burning. At the TPC base command room, Neri spoke to Munakata and the others with a worried look. "That thing's mass can't be detected, and the magnetic field keeps getting stronger." "What's happening?" Munakata asked, frowning. "Is something hiding from us?" Just then, a familiar face filled the center of the monitor, the prophet who had once stood against Ultraman Tiga. He wasn't only on the TPC screens, his image had started appearing on the city's big displays too. He lifted his right hand to his cheek in a mock religious pose and declaimed as if on a broadcast, "Welcome to this episode of Today's Law. I am Sa." Oops, wrong show. The day of final judgment has come. If the true demon is not eliminated, humanity will be destroyed. "Who is he?" Munakata asked. Captain Iruma breathed the name like a curse. "The prophet." "The gate is about to open," the prophet intoned, his voice inciting panic. The strange magnetic interference only amplified his words. Many viewers stared at the screen as if hypnotized, focusing on the pure white angel with wings he showed. The clear sky dimmed. Strong winds swept between the skyscrapers, howling. Crack! Lightning tore the heavens apart, blood-red arcs searing the sky as if trying to rip a hole and summon something beyond. Against that hellish backdrop, the prophet, already dead, it seemed, faced countless citizens and finally uttered the one thing he'd long kept inside. The demon is Ultraman Tiga. Elsewhere, Captain Iruma's mother-in-law was at home, speaking on the phone. "That's right, Ultraman Tiga is a demon. Look what the world has become since he appeared." In Zeta spacetime, Juggler overheard and sneered. "So it's an open conspiracy this time." "A conspiracy?" Yuka echoed, handing him a bubbling drink. She looked nervous. Juggler pushed it aside without breaking eye contact. He wasn't interested. If given a choice, he'd prefer Ramune or coffee. "The word rabble didn't come from nowhere," he said. "There are plenty of idiots, know-it-alls, and selfish people among humanity. They're not rare. Many times, an Ultra Warrior's enemies aren't just monsters or aliens. They're people like that." Yuka blinked. "But aren't they affected by the electromagnetic field too?" "Yes and no." Juggler shook his head. What he hated most were fools like the ones on those videos. If such birds rose to power, some general with half a brain, some queen utterly void of sense, and couldn't even see how foolish they were, they would be disasters for the planet, its people, and life beyond. He pushed the thought away. The electromagnetic field is a bit like Jera. It's a trigger. It can't outright control someone's mind. He turned his head away from the drink and spoke with bitter contempt. But these Cariloid are worse than Jera. They won't even give people comforting lies. They use empty promises and inflammatory falsehoods, most likely things they can't deliver. Those lies are enough to make idiots or people vulnerable in themselves believe the very guardian who protected them is the menace. They'll say Ultraman Tiga is the disaster. That doubt eats at the light of hope, weakening Ultraman Tiga's power. So it's an open conspiracy. Juggler's gaze drifted, and for a moment he seemed to be addressing someone across time and space, the blonde who once criticized him. But I trust the gentle, kind Ultraman Tiga will show us how an Ultra Warrior fights, he said dryly. Don't you agree, Asuka-shin? On the land of light, Neos clenched his fists, memories of his own past stinging, how he'd been misunderstood and rejected by those he protected, accused of causing catastrophe. No one likes being despised, least of all a being of hope like Ultraman Tiga. Still, Neos thought, even if one person believed, that would be enough for him to rise and fight again. If Neos himself could stand like that, Daigo and Tiga would not be so easily defeated. Across the world, the sky took on a gray-yellow pall, like a filter from the underworld. Voices rose. Is Ultraman Tiga truly a demon? Demon. Demon. The deluded masses echoed the prophet, shouting, raving, turning hysterical. They ran through the streets, preaching and spreading the same conclusion everywhere. Ultraman Tiga was a demon. It was like a massive brainwashing pyramid spreading from person to person. Captain Aruma watched the chaos, her face darkening. It looks like Ultraman Tiga can't handle this, she said. She knew Tiga was a hero, but that was exactly the problem. A hero had to bear false accusations. If he resisted forcefully, everything he'd earned would be stripped away and he'd be devoured by a pack of ravenous critics. Exaggeration, repetition, and confident assertions without proof were the perfect tools to sway the crowd. Lena couldn't find Daigo amid the turmoil. Frantic, she joined Captain Iruma. They took the Sherlock and drove through the city until, under the night sky, they finally found him, a stumbling, staggering figure. Daigo, are you all right? Lena cried. You're badly hurt, Captain Iruma said. They each took one of his arms and helped him to his feet. I can hold on, Daigo managed. No sooner had he spoken than the ground trembled violently. The clear sky was swallowed by dark clouds. With every lightning strike from within them, the city shook. Colors snapped between pallid white and bruised purple-black. Flocks of birds screamed, scattering for shelter. And behind those clouds, the gate the prophet had spoken of finally showed itself. Summoned by the sacrificial pure white angel, an utter blackness pressed from the other side. The heavenly gate that had been holding back some unknown existence began to open. 119, the Devil's Judgment. The angels have descended to welcome you, and the gate is about to open. On the city's giant screen, the prophet raised his hands as if pushing open a colossal gate. The people below mirrored him, faces upturned, hands raised high. Praise the sun, they cried, eyes almost worshipful. It wasn't piety so much as infatuation. The enormous, grotesque gate, its stone surface carved with Ouroboros, horned demons, two-faced raptors, and lovers in torment, should have inspired dread. Instead, the crowd seemed enthralled. As the earth trembled, the heavy gate began to part, and a slit opened, spilling a smothering violet mist from whatever lay beyond. The Gate of Hell. Aboard the Charlotte, Captain Iruma stared at the screen, dismayed. With Guts' power, we can't stop that. Maybe not even Ultraman Tiga, she added, the words heavy with the experience of many past encounters. Daigo answered at once, voice sharp. We can't be cowards. Captain Iruma looked at him with a flicker of surprise. Daigo didn't meet her gaze. He spoke more to himself than to anyone else. Even Ultraman can't fight if humans don't believe enough in his light. Light? Captain Iruma echoed absently. Two Guts fighters screamed across the sky toward the gate. That's the Gate of Hell. We can't let it open, Iruma ordered, and Guts opened fire. Rina glanced at Daigo as the fighters launched and mouthed an apology. I don't have time to fix your minor injuries. I'm sorry. Daigo gave a small, reassuring smile. Don't worry about me. Date after the mission? Rina asked, lighter, softer, girlish for a moment. She smiled, then snapped back to business. The expression in her eyes grew hard and focused. The Charlotte's engines roared them into the night, and Daigo slipped away alone. At the corner where he disappeared, a column of light pierced the sky. The figures who called themselves angels pressed down, shrouded in darkness, upon the human world. And from the light, the lonely hero they called a demon faced the approaching gate. "Wait, didn't you even check the rearview mirror?" Hori scolded in the TPC command room. He stared at Rina and Daigo's feeds with some disbelief. They hadn't even noticed that beam of light. Rina bowed her head. "We were focused on the Kyreloid crisis," she said. She had in fact noticed Daigo acting odd lately. After so many dates and shared moments, she could sense the small things. But she hadn't confirmed it with him, and knowing he wouldn't talk, she hadn't told anyone. A few in the room felt a twinge of regret. How many chances had they missed to find out Daigo's secret? "So you've carried all of this alone until now?" Captain Iruma asked softly when she met his eyes. Daigo shook his head. "It's the resolve I had to have." "But you've had us with you too," Iruma replied. On the other side of the gate, Ultraman Tiga rose and slammed his palms against the massive stone, trying to pry it shut. As he pushed, two cloaked figures rose from the ground, and behind them a cloud of floating Kyreloid forms gathered. "Dare challenge the Kyreloid god? Then accept your punishment," one of the cloaked figures intoned. A barrage of psychic waves washed over Ultraman Tiga like a crashing tide. The sudden assault ripped him from the sky and hurled him down hard. This was the Kyreloid's plan, to wrench Ultraman Tiga out of humanity's hearts. The woman who had attacked Daigo earlier sneered at him from the ground. "You'll suffer before these foolish humans, and then you'll die in disgrace." She and her companion raised their hands. Purple arcs of electricity traced their outlines. Smoke billowed, and from a pillar of flame the enemy they'd been waiting for appeared, Kyreloid Tigu, the flame demon warrior. Where the first Kyreloid had worn a look of piteous crying, this one wore a cruel sneer. Under swelling, oppressive music, it overwhelmed Ultraman Tiga with brutal force. Every punch, every kick, every surge of power favored the Kyreloid. Even with Guts' support, Tiga bought only moments to recover. Daigo watched, recognizing the shifting tide. The multiform would struggle here. He needed power. He swept his hand across his forehead. The crystal flared, and the power type answered. "Red form, it's stable," Zeta cried from the land of light, clenching his fist. Zero glanced at him and smiled wryly. "Stable? Watch closely, Zeta. It isn't only Ultra Warriors who can change forms in this universe." On the battlefield, the Kyreloid had already begun to change as well. Where Tiga's transformation was a flash of noble light, the enemy's mutation was foul and organic, the snap of joints, the slither of skin, and an ominous green glow pooled in its chest. A hard carapace grew over its body and blades sprouted along its wrists. "Stronger," a commentator murmured. "It's like Yapul's ace killer." "This isn't just matching Tiga, it's a full all-around enhancement," another voice added. They watched Tiga while dormant and learned how to fight him. The Kyreloid's upgrade came without drama, no bright transformation space, no props, simple and devastatingly effective. Daigo's attacks felt impotent against it. His punches seemed to graze through a boot, they barely scratched the enemy, while the Kyreloid moved faster and hit harder. For the first time since it began, doubt crept into Daigo's heart. He remembered how completely humanity had once branded him a demon, how much harder this battle felt because of that past. Thrown back by the Kyreloid's onslaught, Ultraman Tiga found himself driven against a tall building with no escape. His breathing seemed to tighten. Ultraman Tiga's heart is filled with fear, Zero observed coldly from the space garrison. The scene reminded him of his first clash with Darklops Zero, when mechanical brothers and a single mechanical foe had left him exhausted for a week. Viewers everywhere began to see the Kyreloid strategy unfold. One side had sown agitation among the masses, inciting them to worship the angels. The other attacked Daigo, drawing him into combat while he was wounded and isolated. Momentum slipped from Ultraman Tiga. If the Kyreloid could defeat him outright, the angels' judgment would be carried out, irreversible, final. Everything was teetering on that edge. 120, falling into darkness. The Kyreloid walked toward Ultraman Tiga without hurry, one deliberate step after another. Confidence radiated from its posture. It raised a wrist blade and brought it down toward Tiga's head with a cutting whoosh. Ultraman Tiga rolled out of the way. The building behind him crumbled under the blade. He rose and took a fighting stance, but his grip on the situation had loosened. Even Daigo, usually resilient and steady, felt the enemy's pressure pressing him back. It wasn't only the Caryoloid that unnerved him, it was the humans. Devil. Ultraman Tiga is a devil. Each shouted word cut into Daigo. The devils inside human hearts were far more terrifying than the Caryoloid. At Captain Iruma's home, her mother-in-law watched the screen and kept insisting Tiga was a devil. When the mother-in-law left, Tomoki stared at the hero on the monitor and said firmly, "Ultraman Tiga is not a devil." While they spoke, Ultraman Tiga fought a desperate battle. His strength, speed, and even resolve were being pushed down by the opponent. The Caryoloid's wrist blade scored bright, sparking wounds across his body. The sparks quickly dimmed and drifted into the night, just like Tiga's dwindling energy. The Caryoloid toyed with him. Its blade slid across Tiga's throat, pressing without cutting. A silent threat. "I could kill you whenever I choose." Startled, Tiga pulled back and was caught by an uppercut that sent him to his knees. The Caryoloid hooked his chin with a foot, the same taunting gesture it had used on Daigo before, smiling as if daring him to respond. Boom after boom of heavy blows rained down. Tiga cried out as the timer on his chest began to flash. Ding dong, like a death knell. He had only a little time left, and he knew hesitation would be fatal. If he could not beat the Caryoloid head-on, he would have to evade and entangle, buy time, and try to stop the gate of hell from opening. Crimson crystal on his forehead flared purple. Tiga shifted into sky type and shot up into the air. The Caryoloid, however, was prepared, more than prepared. Eerie green flames danced along its arms, and a pair of purple, devil-like wings unfurled behind it. Does it even have a way to counter sky type? One observer wondered. Heh, even though both have wings, why does this angel look like a devil? Another sneered. Listen, its flight sounds louder than Tiga's. Is it faster? Someone else said. Faster than Tiga, much faster, came the answer. In The Witch of Genesis Spacetime, Bayonetta watched the Caryoloid reveal itself and sneered. Oh, an angel? That's ugly. Mr. Tiga is much more handsome. She fired once. Someone fell and life left them. Smoke curled from the muzzle as she blew on it, the motion oddly casual, lollipop sweet. Tiga and I are linked. He's become a devil like me, so don't just die like that. Bayonetta's figure, swathed in hair-like shadows, flickered and danced, cutting down the ugly angels that spawned from the void. In another space-time, Devil May Cry, Dante sat in an abandoned pub, a strawberry sundae in hand. Ultraman Tiga's a devil? He said, lazily propping his feet on the table. Coincidentally, my old man's from the demon world, so by the Caryoloid's logic, he's a devil too. Giant claws tore through walls, twisted monsters lunged. Dante finished his sundae, unbothered, then drew rebellion with a grin and charged. In my world, he shouted, the ones protecting humans by slaughtering demons are a bunch of devils. Yeehaw. In Gaia spacetime, Gamu and Fujimiya walked amid an overcast sky veiled in darkness. A monster masquerading as a holy angel threatened to destroy the planet. Daigo and Ultraman Tiga are fighting for their lives. We can't fall either, Gamu said, clenching his fists. The situation feels similar. Fujimiya nodded. We have the whole Earth supporting us, but Tiga faces the hostility of many humans. I hope he can overcome that, but their words stopped as purple light converged overhead and surged toward them. The world's beings descended, and two hoarse roars cut through the light. Gaia! A ghoul! Every world had its own trials. Back where the battle centered, Daigo and Tiga's predicament intensified. In the Charlotte, Captain Iruma barked orders. Commander, the Caryoloid has flown into the sky. Understood, Munakata replied. Hori, Shinjo, attack! Hori squinted into the darkness and shook his head. I want to, but I can't get within range. Above the dark cloud bank, the timer on Tiga's chest ticked wildly. Then something came at him from behind. The Caryoloid's wings sliced the air with a sonic boom. Tiga realized with a chill that his enemy's speed outpaced his own. Two orbs of light, one purple and one red, closed in. Then the night exploded. A searing azure light ripped through the sky, turning night into day for a breath, accompanied by an earth-shattering blast that echoed through the heavens. Viewers watched in horror as a figure tumbled from high up. Ultraman Tiga struck from the sky. He had been shot down. Severely wounded, off balance, he crashed headfirst into the ground and smashed a vast crater, dust and smoke blotting out the scene. No one could tell if he lived. The brainwashed people erupted in joy. Others understood what it meant. The Caryloid ignored Tiga sprawled and possibly dying and flew straight for the gate of hell, intent on opening it. That meant the barrier to salvation had been lost. Tiga no longer had the power to stop them. The Caryloid either decided he was already finished, or it didn't need to finish him off at all. After all, the great Caryloid god was about to descend. Rolling, boundless darkness spilled from the gate, spreading toward Ultraman Tiga. His faint light dwindled as the shadow swallowed him whole.